Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is Indra in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 11, Teammate. It was strange, the way the human mind could seemingly ignore something in the background. It was even stranger, the way the human mind would still notice its absence, when this something was not there anymore. One moment the insects in the forest were singing. Cicadas, crickets, grasshoppers, and katydids. As well as more exotic species native to the forest of death, that Shino could mostly name. The next instant, they stopped. Inside Shino's body, his insects did the exact same. For the first time since he had been grafted with them, he could not feel their call. It scared him. It was not the fear that they felt when there was a bigger predator. Most of the insects living in the forest of death did not really have this sort of instinct. Those that did were long since gone, thriving in easier environments. No, the reason they stopped was another instinct altogether. The biggest fish of them all had entered the pond. They waited on its orders. Fu whistled a jaunty tone as she stepped out of the shadow. She saw Teammate, proceeded to ignore them and skipped to the rain ninja, who stood, paralyzed by fear. Shino stood frozen in place as well, not sure what to make of the situation. Akamaru whimpered and Kiba knew right away they were in trouble. She looked at him, contemplative, and then smiled. Fu continued skipping until she stood in front of the downed teenager. There you are. She laughed merrily. I've been looking for you all over this forest. Please, no. Ah, come on. I promised you we'd play, didn't I? She smiled. I don't want to die, please, please I dash. Didn't I? Her face turned blank. Don't kill me like you did them, please, I'll do whatever you want. He begged for his life. Kiba stepped in, face hard. Look, I don't know who you are, and what you did to him exactly, but I don't think he wants anything to do with you. And I can't blame him. She threw Kiba an innocent look, her head tilted. But he promised. Aren't promises made to be upheld? There was a strange light in her orange eyes. Something not quite human, and not even really animalistic either. I don't think this one should be. Kiba gritted out. Well, then, all right. She cheered. You will let me go. The unnamed rain ninja let out, not daring to hope. Well. No. If you remember. I also promised that I'd eat all three of you rain ninjas, didn't I? No, please. There's only one of you left, now. She pointed a finger at him, laughing. Say bye-bye. Hinata saw it in slow motion. The greenish chakra that seemed to ooze through the rain ninja's wound seemed to wake up. It spread through his body in an instant, making his limbs move the way Fu wanted them to. Then his legs twisted on themselves, breaking and squishing in a way the members of Team 8 wished they could forget. They never did. His arms rotated out of his shoulders' sockets, while Fu laughed loudly, holding her belly. He only stopped screaming when his neck finally bent too far. She played with his body, making him dance a bit longer, but then seemed to get bored. Time to eat. She opened her mouth wide, fangs jutting out of her face, and took a large bite of his neck. Blood sprayed her, and some of it hit Kiba and Akamaru, who was whimpering inside his master's jacket. She chewed a bit, didn't seem to enjoy the taste of it, and spat out a mangled fleshy part. She then turned to face Hinata and her team. Her face was covered in blood, not all of it fresh. Do you guys want to play with me? She smiled. This qualified as the urgent kind of situation he had been created for. Naruto's cage bunshin dispelled, warning the original immediately. Well, damn. Shisui said. I wish I had known about this earlier. Itake nodded. I know. But not even my father knows exactly which ninjas are going to be sent before the exam actually starts. Shisui snorted. I know it's supposed to be about fairness, but which part of this strikes you as fair? I taught some basic Sharingan genjutsu to my little brother, but nothing prepares you to face a Biju, except facing one. Jiraiya of the Sunin had said, once. Shisui didn't quote him, but he definitely thought of it. Hopefully, this will be enough to get them out of trouble, if they are to face either Jinchuriki. Itake hoped. Yeah. Who's their last team member, Again. A Sarutobi. Naruto, I think. Oh, I think I saw him at Kurene's funeral, then. Pretty ripped for his age, serious fella. Shisui asked. That would be him, yes. Well, I hope he's learned a thing or two from Lord Third, then. Could come in handy. I don't think facing an out-of-control Jinchuriki is on anybody's training schedule. Let me hope. Of course. Shisui shrugged. Only thing I can do, before the exam's over. He tried to relax. These Jinchuriki sure are something else. Poor guys. They do tend to live a hard life. Itaki agreed. Well, Konoha doesn't even have one anymore, so guess at least someone's avoiding that fate. I guess so. Toru, Suzuki. Naruto stopped. Teammates in danger. As in, real danger. They turned serious right away. Lead us there. Fu laughed, and as she did, breathed out a golden powder that had a greenish tint to it. She bounced, spinning in the air at a dizzying speed. The powder spread independently, seeking somebody or something to infect. Don't let the powder touch you, Kiba. Shino said, leaping away from Fu. You think I don't know this? Kiba shouted back, feeding Akamaru a red pill. Watch out! Hinata screamed. Fu had completed her rotation, and came down at full speed, her leg wreathed in sick orange chakra. Kiba barely dodged her, and still got hit by the debris she created as she hit the tree where he was standing 1 second ago. She laughed and leaped to the sky again, spinning. She came down even faster. Shino seemed to explode when Fu hit the ground, and for a terrifying moment, Kiba thought that was it. But his teammate had managed to replace himself with a log and came out unharmed. A bead of sweat ran down his face. Seeing his normally composed teammate look worried was not good for morale, Kiba thought. My insects are not answering me, he said, lost. Shit. We need to run, Kiba. We can't stay on the defensive. Kiba screamed. She's only toying with us. Silly, I can hear you. Fu laughed. All the same, she started spinning in the air again. Akamaru. His dog barked in agreement, and both of them transformed into a feral-looking version of Kiba. Inyazuka secret art, Fang passing Fang. Kiba and Akamaru started rotating as well. They dashed off the ground in a tornado of claws, going straight after the girl from Waterfall. Fu stopped spinning. With a medgrin on her face, she caught one of the Kibas by the collar of his jacket and pulled. She hurled him straight into the other, leading to him getting hit by the Tsuga head-on. The one who had hit him screamed, a scream that sounded more like a dog howling than a man. But that was Kiba-kun. Hinata realized. She jumped to catch him as he fell. Above her, Fu grew wings, and as they beat with a buzzing sound, she hung in midair. Secret art, scale pulse. She let out a scream that was more chukar than sound. Both Hinata, Kiba, and Akamaru were sent flying, their ears ringing. They hit the ground with a dull thud. Hinata coughed, and she spat some blood. That's bad. What do we do? She wondered. Above her, flying 10 meters above the floor, Fu looked at them the same way a cruel child would observe an insect, wondering what would happen if she were to rip its wings off. Where was Shino? She was too dizzy to focus her Byakugan. Hinata would admit without sort of shame that he was the strongest fighter on their team, overall. But right now, he was crippled by the fact he could not use any of his clan techniques. She saw Shino again. He was up in threes, and had used the distraction they had provided to sneak up behind Fu, a flat-edged blade in hand. He wasted no time, jumping silently at her, aiming to take off her head in a single strike. She casually ducked under his attack. Then she proceeded to catch his arm, holding him up in the air in a very uncomfortable-looking position, suspended by an arm that threatened to break. Silly, I could feel you the whole time. Shino grunted from the strain, but there was nothing he could do. Shino-kun. Hinata cried out. She focused on Fu's wrist, focused her chakra in her right hand and let loose a high-speed palm thrust. 8 trigrams, vacuum palm. Fu saw it coming, of course. She let herself drop down 1 meter and when she caught herself, Shino's arm broke. he screamed. Hinata stopped moving and breathing altogether. What can I do? She would not risk Shino's life by attacking. Kiba was knocked out, and Akamaru would be of no use without his partner. With her Byakugan active, she could read Fu's lips easily. You have insects inside you. Fu cheered, talking to Shino. He didn't answer, settling for trying to free himself instead. That's so cool. Me too. Hinata wasn't sure what she meant, but it had to have something to do with the seal she saw on her back, where the orange chakra was leaking from. Well. It's just Komei and I, anyway. She laughed, then pouted. He wants to be free, but I don't know how to do it. I hope to find a way, someday. Hinata didn't know who or what Komei was for sure, but she could guess something had been sealed within the girl. I think your insects want to be free, too. She cheered. I think I can help you. Some of the noxious chakra escaped from her wings, and entered Shino's mouth, who turned stiff. Hinata watched in horror as the insects he had been holding within his body crawled away from him, unbidden. The process looked more painful than it usually was, and they left large, weeping sores on his body. The insects gravitated around Fu's chakra, buzzing excitedly in the poison cloud that was her life energy. Here. It's all done. Fu said, with the satisfaction of a job well done. You guys are kinda boring, though. I wonder what I should do with you. Her orange eyes drifted lazily over Hinata, Kiba, and finally Shino. Guess you won't need him anyway. Now that he can't be of any use. She shrugged. No. Please, don't. Hinata screamed. That's what the villages do, anyway. Her voice turned serious. Squeeze you dry. And then throw you away once they're done. Poison laced her tone. This is not true. I beg of you, let Shino-kun go. How cute of you. I wish somebody had. No, never mind. Fu corrected. I'm just doing you a favor, really. You'll see. Hinata focused chakra to her feet, and jumped. Maybe she'd reach in time. Fu slapped her away with a casual backhand, and she landed on a large branch, almost missing her landing. Well, time to move on. Fu declared. Then she broke Shino's neck, and threw the body like a rag doll. There was a high-pitched noise. I should find my team. Maybe. Wonder if they have a scroll, she hummed. Well, I should have gotten one myself. Fu laughed. She then flew away, as if nothing of interest had happened here. Or more precisely, something else had caught her interest, so she just went there instead. The noise kept ringing, even though Fu was gone already. A few minutes later, Suzuki arrived with his team, the Sarutobi boy she had seen in the academy and his cousin Toru. Hinata only realized that she had been screaming once her voice had gone hoarse. They ended up burying Shino in the forest. Kiba absent-mindedly told them this was the way Abarame bodies were disposed of, feeding the earth and its living creatures. Kiba, Akamaru, and Naruto ended up digging the hole. Hinata sobbed the whole time, and Suzuki stood next to her, not knowing what to say. Naruto resented the feeling of being so useless. Shino had only been 12. Dying was always a risk for ninjas. But was it really worth it? Toru stood guard, his demeanor subdued. Team 8 was obviously disqualified, not that it mattered much compared to Shino's death, but they would still have to reach the safety of the towers. They didn't have time to stick around, in case Fu decided to come back to finish the job. The only thing Naruto was glad for was that none of his other clones had dispelled. The other teams were safe. Making it to the tower had been easy enough, once they started focusing solely on it. Team 8, its 2 living members, gave them both of their scrolls, so they didn't even end up having to fight people for it. They set up camp near the base, waiting to make sure everybody else from Konoha made it. Once this was done, Team 6, plus Kiba, Akamaru and Hinata went inside. They were among the last to enter, and probably the most affected. Kiba and Hinata accepted their disqualification with a nod. Their sensei, Hyagakeo, took notice of Shino's absence right away, and led them away from the room, a forlorn expression on his face. Without more fanfare, Team 8 was out of the Chunin exams. Hinata wondered what she could have done. And once more, if being a shinobi was really a good fit for her. Not that she would really have a choice, as the Hyuga heiress. Kiba had been unconscious when Shino had died. They didn't always see eye to eye, but he had considered him one of his pack. He would mourn him. Ko would have to talk to Shino's clan, as he had been responsible for him. A very subdued teammate left the tower. It was strange, Naruto felt, the way everybody moved on to the next exam without any care. People have died in here. Shino was 12. What's the point of this? Would he ever become like this too? He listened with one ear as the proctor announced there would be preliminary matches to call off the herd, as too many people had passed. It would take place now. Then, 1 month later, they would hold the final exam, and select the new Chunin. Naruto almost wanted to laugh. What did he really care about being a Chunin himself? If it hadn't been for Sasuke, Toru, and Ino, he'd likely not have stepped foot in this place. Ino was fine, too, if looking a bit beaten up. Her team and her had arrived somewhat late, preferring to play it safe. Team 4 from Konoha had arrived, too. Team Guy were here early, of course. There were 27 people left in the competition. 4 teams from Konoha, which was not much of a surprise. They had entered more teams, being the host nation. Mist had refused to enter. So did IWA, of course. 1 team from Suna. 2 teams from Kumo. 1 team from Waterfall. 1 team from Kusa. The first match was announced. Ino blanched, and Koji started eating nervously. He had faith in his friend, but this. Narashikamaru vs. Gaara of the Desert. Would the 2 contestants please step in the ring? Damn, that's bad. Naruto thought. Troublesome. Shikamaru breathed out. But he looked very worried. Chapter 12, The Boy from Suna. Damn it. Maybe I should just withdraw. Sure, Shikamaru would have been the first to do so, but that Gaara guy seemed dangerous. He'd heard of what happened to several teams in the forest, and that Shino had died, too. It made what they were doing seem a bit too real for him. That kid from Sand is bad news. He's got a strange look in his eyes. Be very careful, Shikamaru. Asuma said, looking entirely serious. That really didn't settle his worries. Asuma noticed it. Don't worry, if it gets bad, I'll jump in and stop the fight. The Hokage's here too, and he's a firm believer of avoiding unnecessary killing. You hear that, Shikamaru? Ino asked, trying to look confident for him. Heh, it really didn't work. I hope Shikamaru will be alright. Koji thought, but he wasn't about to stop his best friend from actually trying. Gaara used a Shunshin to appear in the arena. Sand flicked around him lazily. Here goes nothing. Shikamaru muttered. Naruto held the railing tightly and wished him good luck, looking serious. Man. This really looks bad, huh? The only advantage he really had was that his opponent likely didn't know how his technique worked. And there was the problem. He didn't know how Gaara fought, either. The proctor, a man named Genma, called the start of the fight. Gaara uncorked his gourd and stood, waiting. So did Shikamaru, ready to jump, or dispel whatever technique the genin from Sand was about to use. From the way sand flows around him, this is likely the way he's going to attack. He thought. What kind of attack, though? Seeing as the guy wasn't going to attack, he decided to try his luck. He threw a single kunao. Sand moved to catch it. He started moving in circles around his opponent, sending a weapon here and there to see how the sand moved. Too fast. I can't risk going in close quarters, who knows what this sand could do to me. He wrapped an explosive tag around a few kunao, and threw 2 of them at the same time. They detonated, making a massive amount of smoke and debris fly. When it cleared, Gaara was standing here unharmed, and more sand was outside of his gourd. Man, this is really going to suck. This gourd is full of sand. Naruto asked, more to himself than anything. It's a peculiar technique. Kakashi nodded. The current Kaze cage can do something similar, manipulating gold dust. How do you fight something like this? Sasuke asked. Naruto wondered about the same, he was pretty sure none of his techniques packed much more punch than 2 explosive tags. Kakashi threw Naruto a side look. "I'm sure Reikari would manage," he said evenly. Naruto snorted. It might, actually, but he had never seen it in action. Plus, provoking Kakashi was always nice. Yeah, an unmoving enemy might be the only target your jutsu actually works on. Kakashi actually looked offended. "This sand moves fast, doesn't it, Lee?" Tenten asked. "Yes. And he's not even moving a muscle, so he's conserving stamina, while being protected. What an incredible jutsu, I'd love to test my taijutsu against him." This is probably the worst sort of opponent for Lee, short of genjutsu users. Niji thought. Who knew how fast the sand could actually go? He spoke. The sand is heavily infused with his chakra. He's also wearing a layer of it over his body. It would take being faster than the sand, and strong enough to break the armor, too. That's exactly what makes it exciting. Guy nodded in approval. Niji laughed. Only Lee. The sand rushed after Shikamaru. He actually had to make an effort to avoid getting caught up in it. Wave after wave came after him. Oh boy. I can't keep this up for long. The guy from Suna was just standing there, looking bored. He threw a smoke screen, followed by a flashbang, set to detonate a few instants later. That turned out to be useless, too, as Gaara closed his eyes. His sand just swept more ground, blindly, and it seemed to take no more effort on his part. "This bores me," Gaara said. "If you're not afraid, fight me, now." "I'm trying," Shikamaru quipped back, but he was getting frustrated. He couldn't get close enough to use his shadow jutsu, and there was his sand in the way anyway. The sand at Gaara's feet began to fire small pieces in every direction, forcing Shikamaru to waste more stamina. Poison could work. Unfortunately, he didn't have any supplies on him, and no time to brew something with whatever he did have. The only thing he could do was to catch him with his shadow. But even then, he was pretty sure the sand moved on Gaara's thoughts, which meant he didn't know if the shadow possession would be enough. He would have to knock him before his sand could grab him. Troublesome. He started formulating a plan. "I have had enough." Gaara made a motion with his hand, the first of the match. The sand leapt out, twice as fast, and grabbed Shikamaru, covering him. He tried to move. "I forfeit," were the words he wanted to say, but sand was already in his mouth. Was this how he died? He thought he heard a man speak. "That will be quite enough, Gaara of the desert." The fifth Hokage's voice carried over easily. His red eyes were focused on Gaara, who stared back. Despite his wishes, he couldn't crush the boy the way he had intended to. The sand was slowly falling off Shikamaru, who was spitting out sand, looking terrified, and crawling back to him. It was as if his mastery over it, that he had had for his whole life, had suddenly been replaced by fumbling hesitation. How? Gaara thought. It was the eyes, he realized. The red eyes had somehow prevented him from crushing his opponent. "Proctor, this match is over." "Yes, Hokage-sama." The man bowed. "Winner, Gaara of the desert. Both of you, please regain your teams." Shikamaru almost ran off, cold sweat running down his back. Gaara stared for a few more instants, and the Hokage looked back disinterestedly. He wouldn't forget this. He would remember the Uchiha's name. "Are you okay?" Koji and Ino rushed him as soon as he came. Yeah, I am," he answered. "But I really thought." Asuma nodded. He had been about to rush in, as he had promised. "Hokage-sama had it under control," he said with confidence. Just like Minato had been, Fugaku was the best of his generation. But you never really get used to these close brushes to death. Shikamaru looked at him, tried to put on a wry smile. It looked a bit shaky. "I guess this is part of being a shinobi, huh?" "Damn, your dad's awesome," Toru shouted. Sasuke just nodded proudly, his nose in the air. He then pointed at the screen, when it flashed. Toru leapt into the arena with a flip. Kakashi snorted. "Show off." Temari of the Desert vs. Uchiha Toru. Hey there, beautiful. Toru winked at her. She looked at him, and proceeded to ignore him, waiting for the proctor's call. Time to shine. Toru shouted, a fist in the air. Tamari rolled her eyes, and opened her fan up completely. Against an Uchiha, she would not waste any time. His fire jutsu would just get more dangerous against her wind style. She filled the entire arena with violent winds. When it settled down, Toru was left alive, but severely wounded. She snorted. Serves the little imbecile right. The match got called. Winner, Tamari of the Desert. She flew off. And then in. Hey there, beautiful. Toru winked at her. She looked at him, and proceeded to ignore him, waiting for the proctor's call. Time to shine. Toru shouted, a fist in the air. Tamari rolled her eyes, and opened her fan up completely. Against an Uchiha, she would not waste any time. His fire jutsu would just get more dangerous against her wind style. She filled the entire arena with violent winds. When it settled down, Toru was left alive, but severely wounded. She snorted. Serves the little imbecile, wait. Something wasn't right. The match got called. Winner, Tamari of the Desert. Hey there, beautiful. Toru winked at her. She looked at him, and proceeded to ignore him, waiting for the proctor's call. Time to shine. Toru shouted, a fist in the air. Tamari rolled her eyes, and opened her fan up completely. Against an Uchiha, she would not waste any time. His fire jutsu would just get more dangerous against her wind style. She filled the entire arena with violent winds. When it settled down, Toru was left alive, but severely wounded. She snorted. What the hell am I doing? She screamed on the inside. The match got called. Winner, Tamari dash. She lost consciousness as the blunt end of a kunai slammed against the back of her head. Winner, Uchiha Toru. Man, this really feels dirty. Toru sighed sheepishly. He had caught her in a Sharingan genjutsu the moment he had winked at her. His team was cheering, though, so he didn't feel too bad. The next matches went. Naruto watched, focused. A genin from Kumo beat up a genin from Konoha's Team 4 handily. Niji destroyed the second genin from Team 4, in just a few seconds. He tried not to make it too humiliating, but well. Kankuro from Suna beat the last member of the team, catching him within his puppet. Man, they really have bad luck. Karen, from Kusa vs. Mizwai, from Kumo. Seemed like they didn't have family names in their villages. That was mildly interesting. The Kumo ninja was better, this much was obvious. And he apparently knew it, from the way he was toying with the girl from Kusa. He would feint attacks with his sword, making her get ready to parry with a kunai, and then just not do anything. He was just making her tense on purpose. This is unneeded. Something happened after a few minutes of this, when the people started to jeer. Down in the arena, Karina couldn't tell whether they were booing her, him, or the whole match. At first, she got self-conscious. Then sad. But after a while, she just got mad. The more the guy from Kumo taunted her, the more parallels she drew to her life in Kusa. Did they all think she was a joke? She'd show them. The Sarutobi from the first exam seemed to notice her change in disposition, and gave her a thumbs up. Somehow, just seeing one person encouraging her teammates never did, of course was enough. She pretended to miss her dodge, and tripped. When the Kumonin went to finish her with an electrified hand chop at the back of her neck. She grabbed his wrist. There was the smell of burned flesh, and the pain registered, of course. But she was just too angry. She saw red. Her right hook broke a few teeth, and now her good hand hurt. The Kumonin fell. She fell on top of him. The real beating only started then. Holy shit! Naruto muttered under his breath. I almost feel sorry for cheering her on, now. Sasuke cringed, and turned his Sharingan off. There was no point in seeing this guy get beat up so badly. Okay. You can stop. Winner, Karen, from Kusa. Huh? Oh yeah, the match. She got up. One of the teammates of the Kumo ninja looked angry. The girl was crying. Their sensei just shrugged. Ms. Y definitely needed a good beating by someone their age. Teeth were easily replaced, anyway. She threw a beaming smile at the Sarutobi, who just answered with a hesitant one. Man, you're so screwed now. She noticed you. Toru whispered. Ino was glaring daggers at him too. Damn. It was kind of cool, though. He thought. Tenten easily beat up one of Fu's teammates. The lightning jutsu the Kumo-nin was throwing around didn't even slow Koji down as he rolled over him. The girl from the Kumo team won against another guy from her village. Uchiha Suzuki vs. Kaire, from Kumo. Suzuki moved to the area calmly. His dad was watching, and while it made him nervous, he knew he could win. Kakashi-sensei had trained them, and he was about as good as Toru, or Naruto. He had no doubt either would win their matches, so he focused on that notion. He believed in Toru especially, and that meant he could believe in himself. He turned his Sharingan on, initiated with a few shuriken. Kaire ducked under them, but that helped him notice the shuriken hidden in the shadow of the first volley. He jumped up to avoid both of them, and Suzuki pulled on the wire he had attached to both. At the same time, he weaved 3 hand seals. Fire style, great fireball technique. He thought, leaving the theatrics to Toru or Kakashi. Alright, now he's likely going to use some mobility jutsu to avoid these. I'll use my Sharingan to predict which way and catch him in a hold, coming from the angle where he can't see me. He focused chakra to his feet, ready to spring. That's what Kakashi would do. But then again, Kakashi knew better than to leap in the air with no visibility. Instead, the Kumo Genin fell from the air, having been hit by both the technique and the 4 shuriken. He was currently trying to put out the flames. I yield. Please. Put it out. The proctor did, and called for a medic nin. Winner, Uchiha Suzuki. His father nodded with a small, proud smile, and Suzuki beamed. There were a few more matches. Ino won against a girl from Kusa by tricking her and taking control of her body once she was immobilized. Naruto paid less attention after this. Rock Lee destroyed the genin from Waterfall. Naruto saw the display. Ah, fuck. Fu from Taki vs. Sarutobi Naruto. Suzuki cringed, and Toru stayed quiet. Kakashi gave him a serious look. Forfeiting is also an option, was what he tried to convey. He thought about it. His teammates were already in. What was he still doing here? He smiled. Turned out this was the moment Naruto found out he had some fighting spirit. Chapter 13, Pest Control. You don't seem too worried. Ino said. Well, I might not look like it. Naruto shot back, wrapping some armor the old man had given him a long time ago around his forearms. Plus, you look nervous enough for 2. Of course I am. She folded her arms. It's like you don't know. She's dangerous. Yes. He said dryly. Now, who told you that? She looked away. It had been him, of course. The Hokage's here anyway. Nothing happened to Shikamaru. He assured her. Yes, but still. Oh, and there's Kakashi-sensei. I guess. He joked, teasing a short laugh out of her. He heard an offended hey coming from him. Congrats on your win by the way, you deserved it. He smiled, easily disarming her. Ah. Yes, thank you. She looked so shy whenever he gave her a compliment. Well, he checked his equipment again, and cracked his neck, to Ino's disgust. I think I'm as ready as I ever will be, then. She hesitated. Be careful, all right. He nodded and jumped into the arena. Give her hell. Toru shouted. Suzuki said nothing, most likely because his dad was there, but the fire in his eyes told him enough. Kakashi had his Sharingan eye open, and for some reason, this was enough reassurance that he'd at least survive this fight, should the worst happen. Last fight. Begin. The proctor opened the match. Fu smiled. Her wings unfolded behind her, and she flew straight at him. She's fast. She hit his chin with a rising elbow and he felt his head snap back. I hope this didn't give me whiplash. He parried her left hook, but took her right knee in the belly. She then spun, and kicked with her left leg. The blow hit him in the temple and he was sent flying. And she hits like a wagon, too. He skidded across the floor before he recovered. He wiped the blood that was getting in his eyes, and cycled some chakra through his head to clear the impending dizziness. She was already almost on him, her 2 elbows in front of her face, aiming for his chest. He ducked out of the way at the last moment, and managed to land his first hit, a rising kick that combined with her speed, led to her hitting the wall at full speed. It broke. Fu came out of the hole laughing, clearing dust and debris off of her. That's nice. Her eyes shone. Let's take it a bit faster. Orange chakra spread around her like a miasma. Somewhere in the stands, Garo looked more interested than he had been in a while. This was somebody like him, he was certain of it. He would make sure to kill her himself. And then he would crush Sarutobi. Or maybe in reverse order. Fu inhaled, and blew towards Naruto. More of the scale dust came out, hurling towards him at a high speed. This looks like bad news. He started spreading chakra through his body, enhancing his speed and reflexes. It didn't seem like he could afford not to fight at his best, even if it drained his stamina faster. According to Hinata and Kiba, this allowed her to take control of her opponent's limbs. Better not to get anywhere close to it, until I'm sure how to finish this. Fu appeared through the scales, dashing with her leg out. She missed him narrowly, and then rose up toward the ceiling. What now? He wondered. She started spinning vertically, gaining speed at each turn. She then folded her wings, and started falling towards him. Chakra gathered along her leg, so much that Naruto could see it. With a cry, she finished with a forceful heel kick. This time, only the lightning chakra he had been cycling through his body allowed him to dash away, as the floor exploded where he had been 1 second ago. Fu rose up again and started spinning once more. Like hell, I'm going to wait. Naruto threw a smoke screen to the ground. When the smoke went away, there were 6 of him. Each of them holding his battle staff. Fu laughed in delight. More of you to play with. She fell down again, diving for one of the Narutos in sight. He tried to catch her with the staff but she was too strong. He dispelled. The other Narutos held the snake seal, for lightning release. Now was his chance. Lightning release, flash step. For some reason, he said it out loud. He was sure Toru would be proud. Both the real Naruto and the clones moved at a much higher speed than before towards Fu, who was still stuck in the ground. Lightning flashed around their feet, and they didn't hesitate when they got in range. 5 staffs blurred through the air and smashed with incredible force against the downed Fu. She shrieked. Nice. I see you taught him how to use lightning style. Guy exclaimed, teeth bright. Kakashi pretended not to hear it. Did you say something? Well, this was his chance to finish it quickly. Hopefully that was enough. Shame he hadn't bothered learning the Reikari. Fu let out a high-pitched scream, and the resulting shockwave dispelled all of Naruto's clones. It also sent him flying back, his ears ringing. That hurt. She wasn't laughing anymore. Her injuries were pretty light, and she was already healing. How? But something told Naruto she wasn't used to getting wounds that were not self-inflicted. Instead of showing his worry, he provoked her. I'll do better next time. There won't be a next time, she said placidly. Wait and see. He unsealed an explosive tag, let his chakra englobe it, and created 3 more Kage Bunshin, who appeared with the same tag in hand. He put the tag away. His clones stood between him and Fu, legs wreathed in small amounts of lightning, ready to intercept her. They moved, putting distance between themselves and the miasma cloud that was still following them. She halted. She only uses rush-down attacks, besides the cloud thing. Sasuke had noted earlier. Seems like Naruto picked it up, too. Yeah, he's good. Toru smiled. No wonder he's like the 3rd, 4th best on this Uchiha team. I'm not Uchiha. Kakashi corrected. Aren't you called Kakashi of the Sharingan? Toru asked. Yes. He smelled a trap here. Itaki has the same nickname. That's as Uchiha as it gets. I'll take it. Who could refute this kind of circular logic? Naruto summoned more clones. His chakra was starting to dwindle, but he had no better option. They were made with smaller amounts of chakra, as their armbands attested. That was the whole point, keeping as much as he could, while throwing in distractions for Fu. He did the same signs as his clones did. Lightning style, lightning clone technique. The C-ranked version of the A-rank lightning shadow clone technique might prove its worth today. The clones the technique created were more basic. They could think on a very rudimentary level, and carry out attacks. Jutsus, on the other hand, were something they couldn't do. Fu, deciding they were of no real danger, compared to the shadow clones, decided to dash through one of them. It dispelled, shocking her with a spark of electricity. The nearest clone used this opportunity to smash her face with his staff, putting all of his weight in it. When she fell down, another was already upon her. She dispelled both, but in the meantime, Naruto had summoned more of them. She floated to the ceiling. Naruto hesitated, but then nodded to his clones. He created even more shadow clones, who stayed on the ground. The others focused some chakra in their legs, and jumped up to the ceiling, hanging upside down. The lightning clones were weighting down. Naruto was starting to be a bit lightheaded, and he wasn't sure if it was from the chakra he was spending, or hanging upside down. Probably both. He made a sign to his clones, and they started pulling out wires. The D-ranked lightning style, static wire technique was applied to them, and he attached them to Kunao. He handed some of them to his lightning clones as well. Whenever Fu came close to any of them, they would use the wires to deliver smaller electric shocks onto her. And as she had only one pair of eyes, she couldn't keep track of the constantly moving wires, held by the clones running both on the ceiling and the ground. If this wasn't annoying enough, they managed to sneak in a few staff hits whenever one of them could. And they abused the starlight technique to blind her as often as possible. The Kakashi method, annoy them until they make a mistake. Kakashi mimed wiping a proud tear from his eye. Fu was starting to get frustrated. No, scratch that. She was mad as shit. This game of cat was not fun anymore. She wanted to kill him. Fu was fast, she knew it. But the shitty Konoha monkey was pretty fast himself. She had hoped he'd get tired soon, as she could see him getting winded. But then he popped a soldier pill, shouting he could keep it up all day long if needed. And then he started using blade weapons as well. The feeling of steel biting her ankles, and one that narrowly missed her eye was already too much. This annoying, weak little ant. She didn't know any jutsu, as nobody in the village would risk teaching her until she had proved her loyalty. What kind of stupid bullshit was this? She hated the village, of course she could not pretend to be loyal. Had she been thinking clearly, she probably would just have chosen to expand Kome's scale breath technique until it covered the whole arena. But one of the clones slapped a lightning palm against her eye. She saw red. One moment the fight was going decently. Well, semi-decently, maybe. She didn't seem to get any tired, and there were only so many soldier pills he could swallow before overdosing on them. The fact she was getting angrier and sloppier had seemed like good news, at first. But the more it went, the more chakra seemed to gather around her. He tried not to think too much of it. No ninja actually got more chakra because of their emotions, that made no sense. Sure, you could use more of it, but it would just fry you quicker. He held back a laugh when a clone hit her with the lightning palm. He knew how bad this shit hurt. He stopped laughing when a malevolent aura of orange-green chakra exploded from her, nuking his clones and making him fall from the ceiling. As he fell, a huge around 3 meters large insectoid shape, with humanish skin that looked like it had been set on fire was upon him. Kinda looks like a rhinoceros beetle. Multiple blades of wind raged around the creature as it let out a high-pitched shriek. What felt like 1,000 cuts opened all over his body, before a high-pressure scale blast hit him straight on. He smashed against the two-finger statue and drifted in and out of consciousness as he fell. Kakashi leaped, full speed ahead, a pair of seals in his left hand. The Hokage had already caught Naruto. Guy distracted the Seven Tails with a more overt attack, the kind that you could not afford to ignore. The seals were applied, and just as quickly as she had entered her version 2 mode, Fu reverted to normal. Asuma caught her, making sure to keep one wind-enhanced trench knife on her jugular. The waterfall Jonin said nothing. He already knew Fu was unstable. He just hoped the consequences for himself and his 2 students would not be too dire. If it were up to him, he would have gotten rid of the little monster a long time ago. The match was over. Fu was left alone with the Hokage, a stern-looking man with burning eyes that belied his composure. The rush of battle had long left her body. "This is against every treaty we have in place," the Hokage said simply. Fu bit her lip. This much, she knew. "As you know, this leaves me no other option but to disqualify you." "No. These are the rules," the 5th said, stonily. "I beg you, please, not this. I don't want to get back to my team," went unsaid. The Hokage was already walking away. She felt a pulse of hot, burning rage within her. She forced it down when she felt his hard red eyes on her again. This was the leader of a village, he was way stronger than her, she could tell. And, her inability to ignore her impulses had led her to this situation in the first place, didn't it? Instead, she did the thing she had promised herself not to do anymore. She melted, and started crying hot, ugly tears of frustration and disappointment. In the arena, the proctor announced the result. Winner, Sarutobi Naruto. His body bleeding and hurting from almost every angle, Naruto heard the verdict. Ino was running towards him, followed by his team. He felt a bit warm, but could not move without a wince, so he let them come. "Damn, but this is definitely my shittiest victory yet." The old man would definitely be proud. Chapter 14, Interlude. Nobody liked her. From the moment she was born, Ishikari knew she was the 8th. The 8th of what, she didn't know. What she knew was that the people around her, especially women around her age, never liked her. They never told her that, of course. But she could tell from the way they treated her. Walking past her like she wasn't there at all. Talking about her in hushed tones. She had tried building something with them, of course. She had tried interacting with them, learning about what girls her age found interesting. She had read all of the romance novels, learned about the most eligible bachelors. She had studied all of this for hours. But when the moment came, she couldn't. Her confidence blew like a candle in the wind. No one smiled at her, told her they found her interesting. She ended up giving up, over time. Watching people live their lives, laugh, smile, and love. The longing was even stronger then. Why couldn't she be like them? The wish warped with time. Soon enough, instead of punishing herself for being so weak, she made up her mind. If everybody seemed to believe something was wrong with her in the first place, well, she would give them a reason. This shit again. Naruto wondered when he woke up. His head was throbbing, and it was night. Apparently, he was in the hospital again. His injuries had been more on the reasonable side, but nonetheless, he was to stay a few days. Somebody had left him flowers while he was sleeping, which was for most of the day. Ino. He thought with a smile. There was also a book about Fuinjutsu, courtesy of his sensei, and a handwritten note, half of which was written in smooth cursive, the other in messy, Enki blots. Suzuki and Toru, then. In the note, they explained that since he had managed to stumble his way into the last round of exams, he read with a laugh, he would have the rest of the month to prepare for it. Both Toru and Suzuki went to train with their clan. Well, considering he himself was facing Suzuki in the first round, it was probably better to train separately anyway. That likely left him alone with Kakashi. Truth be told, he liked the man in his casual way. Now knowing he could trust him to have his back for sure was a relief. "I think it's time we started using your Kage Bunshin to speed up your training," Kakashi had declared. "Huh?" Naruto said, more in surprise than anything else. "Oh. I guess you never realized about the Kage Bunshin trick," Kakashi continued smugly, both eyes closed. "Well, it's no wonder, if you use it more for combat." "Well, originally, the jutsu was used for intel dash." Naruto laughed and held a hand up. No. I know all this. I have a few clones doing some reading for me right now, actually." Kakashi folded his arms. "When were you planning on telling me?" Uh. The older man sighed. Well, no matter. Let's get on with it. Then he realized something. Wait, you said a few. Kakashi had meant to use a single clone to focus on book learning while the real Naruto trained with him. Yeah, why? How many? Around 5 today, I think. He then added. I can do more, though. That shouldn't be possible. 2 would be pushing it, and the only way most people could make it work is by having the clones sit almost entirely still, for only up to a few hours a day. The human body was not meant to accommodate for the stress of living 3 days into a single one. And he was using 5, every day? There was something here that didn't add up. Oh, and I had 4 of them running missions for me, before. Wait. That wasn't just you speed-running your way through them. Nah, clones. Damn. Is this even legal? No law against it. Yet. Yeah, yet. I used them to help me draw up some seals faster, too. Kakashi understood that either something about Sarutobi Naruto was very out of the ordinary, or he was using a different technique altogether. He'd have to check with the third. He decided to pretend nothing was strange, here. What about elemental training? I didn't really think it would work, honestly. Wouldn't it be doing the same thing over and over again? I thought it'd be better to have them do different things. Nothing's preventing you from decomposing the elemental training in several aspects, you know this, right? Naruto said nothing. Truth be told, he hadn't really considered this. And what about physical training? If exhaustion was not really a problem. God, the possibilities. He was jealous. Now, it was time to figure out the limits of this. Well. Clones can't train my body. Naruto said cautiously, already expecting his sensei to try to make him look like a punk. That was the basis of their relationship, really. No, they can't. He admitted. But muscle memory is a thing. Isn't this a muscle thing? Nah, it's procedural memory. Repeat it enough times, and you can do it with almost no conscious effort. He paused. This would free you up to focus on other things in combat. Plus, even if it really were a muscle thing, the principle would still hold. Naruto could see many ways this could be useful. Weapons training, katas, reflexes training, as well as some aspects of speed training. I see. I'm glad your poor old sensei can still teach you a trick or two. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks who? Thanks, sensei. He managed between clenched teeth. That's better. So. When does a second affinity? Kakashi asked, later. Yeah. Don't know much about it, though. Kakashi thought. Sasuke is going to be a tough opponent and wind definitely won't help against him. It's your choice, of course, but I think you might be better off just focusing on lightning style. Sure thing. It was pretty rare for a genin to have 2 affinities, but he wasn't about to let the little shit know. During the day, he had a few clones doing more theory work, each of them created with the lowest amount of chakra he could spare. A few more were practicing Bojutsu under the sporadic guidance of Hiruzen. Well, it was mostly the old man telling him his footwork was sloppy, and how much better he had been when he had been a child himself, yada, yada. The tips were actually helpful, though. Karen was walking through the village on a warm autumn night. Somehow, she had managed to get herself in the last round of exams, when both of her teammates hadn't. They were a bit resentful, even though they said nothing about it directly. Wouldn't want her to feel she had something over them. The fact they were now stuck in Konoha for a full month, just so the teammate they only saw as a healing bank could compete, added insult to the injury. Her sensei trained her some, but she was starting to have the feeling that he was not doing a very good job at it. Maybe it was because he saw no use in training what was basically a walking medicine bag, maybe it was because he was just plainly bad at it. Sure, he was a strong jonin, wouldn't want her powers to be lost to the village entirely if she were to die, but a good sensei he wasn't. She had had so much trouble convincing the village leader to let her enter the academy. All for what, this? Kusa had pretty limited resources on shinobi training, outside of direct training. In this aspect, Konoha was much better. The only problem was that as a shinobi from Kusa on decent terms with Konoha, but not a trusted ally like Suna or Kumo, progressively, she could only access very few of them. She sighed. And now she was getting hungry on top of it. Karen picked a food stall at random. People were chatting loudly in it, some of them inebriated already. They seemed to be having fun. There were some civilian teenagers as well, gesturing loudly, talking about their coming holiday. Well, there was no hiding it. She was lonely. She came closer to the counter to order ramen, sakura rolls, udon. She wasn't sure what to eat. Somebody was talking. Karen continued reading, almost drooling. Wait, were they talking to her? The sushi's good. We ordered too much, actually, so if you want, come sit with us, we can share. That was the Sarutobi boy who had gotten absolutely destroyed by the insect girl. He had also encouraged her, when no one would. She said nothing, too surprised to react. Sarutobi shrugged. Take a seat. It's cheaper if you eat at the counter itself, so. Cheapskate. Didn't you do like a ton of missions before the exams? What are you doing with the money, even? The pretty blonde girl asked, snorting. I was planning on buying your house and building a bar on top of it, actually. He answered with a straight face, not breaking eye contact with Karen. He did have very nice eyes. The girl, likely a Yamanaka, snorted. There was another girl, with very long pink hair held in a low ponytail. She looked casual enough, but nobody could miss the long scar that bisected her left eye. Or the way her left arm ended after her biceps. The girl threw her a friendly enough look, so she just nodded in greeting. Sarutobi patted the chair next to him. She felt a bit shy still, but took a seat. Hello. She said, a bit nervously. Hi. I'm Karen, I'm from Kusa. Pleased to meet you. She introduced herself, not forgetting her manners. Sarutobi Naruto. That's Yamanaka Ino, and Harino Sakura. He returned. Ino stared at Naruto. Aren't you such a big sociable guy, now, huh? What do you mean? He asked innocently. Never mind. Is it about making introductions for you? Ino ignored him and turned to Karen. You had quite a show in the preliminaries. She said with a small smile. Oh. That. Karen blushed. She kinda had lost control back then. Ah. Sorry if it was unseemly. Not at all. Ino laughed easily. The guy seemed to be a real asshole. Still. It's a shinobi fight. You did perfectly fine. Ino reassured. Losing control is always a bit. Don't tell me you regret it. Ino sighed. The girl seemed a bit reserved, maybe she'd have to tease some reaction out of her. What? No. Karen huffed, before she could think. I didn't say that. I just wish I could have sneaked a couple more punches in, yeah no. She said, palming her fist. The Sarutobi's eyes widened a bit when he heard her. Ah shit. Here she went again. She felt herself blush up to her roots. The three Konoha ninjas or likely former ninja, in the Harino girl's case paused. For a second, Karen thought she had said something she shouldn't have. Then they started laughing. I think we'll get along just fine. Ino snorted. Ma. This sure is weird, preparing one of your precious students to face the other. I wonder how much I should say, and still remain fair to both Sasuke and you. He sighed. And what happens if any of you manage to win your matches and end up facing poor Toru? Questions. Any thoughts? No answer. What about your little Yamanaka friend? Could you fight her at full capacity? I heard you were close. And the tiny redhead I sometimes see you with. You're not very talkative today, are you, Naruto? Naruto exploded. You're standing on my back. Kakashi kept on increasing the weights he used, and when Naruto conveniently forgot about them, he had decided to improvise. Ah yes. True. You can stay silent. I mean it, Kakashi's a real dick, sometimes. And don't get me started on the old man, he's the worst. Can you believe he actually had me believe he had some sort of dojutsu called the Wise Monkey Eye when I was a kid? Naruto grumbled. Karen stifled a laugh, next to him. You actually believed it? She asked softly. I was 5. 5. He shouted. How could I know better? I should have known he was making it up. He put his finger on his forehead, and pretended to focus. He took on his best old man voice. This eye is a powerful one. It allows me to make children who don't make their bed, disappear in the shadow monkey realm. Forever. She let out a big belly laugh before catching herself, blushing. I kinda wish I had that. She said, wistfully. Ah. True. She was an orphan, too. Well, no worries, I'll bring you to meet the old man, then. He said, with more cheer than he felt at the reminder she was alone. He can probably teach you a trick or two. She tried not to allow herself to feel hopeful. You think so? Definitely. Just ignore his eccentricities. Naruto met Fu by accident on the day the team from Taki was leaving. For once, she was not smiling anymore. He felt some sort of vindictive glee at that. It didn't make up for what she had done to Shino, not even close. She threw a murderous look at him, and he knew that if they met outside of the village, all bets were likely off. He shot her a placid smile in return, and left before he could see her reaction. The month was over pretty fast. He trained with Kakashi during the day, left some clones to practice with weapons, 2 more to do the reading. Biwako took a liking to Karen, telling the old man she reminded her of Kushina, whoever that was. The old man did well on his promise, and gave her some helpful instruction. Nothing too specific, of course. Kusa was still a tentative ally. A few rare books went a long way, though. Naruto met with his friends whenever they all had free time, which became rarer and rarer as the month went. He saw Karen more often, overall, and he enjoyed the redhead's company. Something about her felt very familiar, in a way. Citizens from Suna and Kyumo arrived in the days before the finals. Naruto watched them come, with a few of his friends. There was only one participant from Kusa, and nobody came to Karen. A large group of Kyumo ninjas arrived. Most of them had dark skin, and imposing physiques. At their helm was a man that was even larger, with slicked back pale blonde hair. That was the 4th Raikage. He looked like the surly type. Suna's delegation came, puppets in tow, and part of their faces obscured by veils. The Kazekage was a man who looked like an older version of Gaara, and just as friendly. Both of the cage made the 5th Hokage look approachable, which was saying something. The 3 of them met at the gate, and they exchanged greetings that were more or less genuine. There was some tension in the air, especially between the Kazekage and the Raikage. He'd have to ask the old man about that, at some point. The day after, the exams started in the morning. Chapter 15, Leaves, Dancing. The arena was packed. As far as Naruto could remember, this was the first time he had seen so many people in one place. He had been too young to remember the 5th's inauguration and the impressive fireworks displays, and the yearly village events were either more spread out in terms of space, or simply involved less people. He brought Kano Amaru, who was grinning like the little fool he was, very endearing, though to Biwako, who wished him good luck with a slight smile. He passed in front of the Hyuga clan, where a man who looked like an older Niji, as well as his identical copy, gave him an indifferent glance. Hinata saluted him, with a polite smile, and her little sister, who was 2 years younger if he remembered right from the academy, stuck her tongue out of him, eliciting a gasp from her sister. Hanabi. Nah, I don't mind, really. He smiled amused. When Hinata looked away, he mouthed little shit to the younger girl, who seemed shocked. Served her right. Uchiha Shisui was the proctor of the last exam. Naruto wasn't sure how they had managed to get one of Konoha's shining stars to work on one of his few days off, but they had done it. The 2 foreign kage were sitting in the lodge, along with the 3rd, who was there as an esteemed guest. The Godame announced the start of the finals. Esteemed ladies and gentlemen. He started. Welcome. All of you have our thanks for gathering here in Konoha for the Chunin selection. The crowd roared in delight as several Uchiha clan members set off intricate fire jutsu towards the sky. We will now begin the matches of the final round between our 14 candidates. Fugaku waved a hand. Sit back and enjoy the show. He sat down and sighed, once he was sure nobody was looking. Are you embarrassed? The third asked. I never really liked this sort of spectacle. Fugaku answered, cheeks looking a bit red. The Kaze cage hit a snort and the Rakage let out a booming laugh. That's the best part, though, Hokage Dano. Alright, you guys ready? Face the audience, they're here for you, after all. Shisui said casually. Rules are simple. Fight until defeat, or until the moment I declare a clear winner. He let his eyes roam over them, and even without having activated the Sharingan, they felt his sharp gaze. One more thing. He said, tone serious. Let's avoid the killing. I'll intervene if needed. His eyes stayed on Gaara for a touch longer than anybody else, besides Toru, but then he looked amused to make his point clear. Now, there are more Konoha ninjas than last time, but yeah, let's say it's because the exam is taking place at home. He winked at them. Some of them didn't seem particularly amused. Let's start. First match, Hyuga Niji and Takai, from Kumo. The rest of you, go to the waiting room. Watching Niji fight was always a bit worrying, Suzuki felt. The Kumo ninja, having watched him before, decided to keep some distance between them. He attacked with a few far-reaching lightning-style ninjutsu. The problem he soon faced was that he had based his whole strategy on the basis that Niji was a close-range fighter. Ignoring one major aspect, that being that Niji knew exactly how most people would approach a fight against him. He weaved through the lightning bolts, conserving his stamina. He had practiced fighting against Tenten hundreds of times. So what if the weapons were replaced by Raiden techniques? It was all the same to him, and he also had the added advantage of seeing exactly how his opponent was going to use his chakra, by the way he focused it. Once he saw the 3 different attack patterns the Kumo ninja used, the game was set. He waited until Takai used his electric needle technique again, and from his obscured position in the dust cloud it created, he struck. A vacuum palm caught the Kumo ninja in the chest, and Niji was upon him the next instant. The Rakage palmed his face. Did nobody tell him the Hyuga have had long-range attacks as well? He grumbled. The third laughed. Well, the crowd seems to have loved it, anyway. It was true, they were roaring their approval. Kankuro from Suna, and Karen, from Kusa. Shisui called. Ino cheered for her, and Naruto accompanied her to the gate. Be careful with him. He's not his brother, but he's strong, too. He said. Yes. We've worked on a plan, anyway. Karen said, with more confidence than she felt. He nodded. He hoped she would be all right. Karen swallowed nervously as she looked into Kankuro's eyes. Try you best. He said, with a confident smirk. Kugutsu no Jutsu, art of the puppet master. The bands around his puppet unpeeled, revealing its four-armed, grotesque shape. Up so close, Karen could see the thin threads of chakra he was using to control it. Without further ceremony, he sent his puppet flying after her. She dashed an end to the left, rather than away. There was no point putting more distance between them, as he had the reach advantage anyway. The puppet's blade whistled, and she noticed they were coated in poison, from their gleam. She had to fall back with a yelp, as the puppet opened its mouth, throwing several darts towards her. He's definitely trying to keep me at a distance. She thought. Good. She had been afraid of him actually being good at close-range fighting. Karen was not sure how many hidden weapons the puppet had, and it was hard to predict its moves, compared to a human opponent. She could not see any chakra buildup, and thus was forced to rely on her other senses more. And she didn't trust her eyes too much. A smoke bomb was released by the puppet. She rolled, making sure to keep the smoke screen in between her and Kankuro. Then, as the smoke cleared, she felt it. Huh. His chakra signature had moved. She could definitely see Kankuro in front of her, where he had been, but this was not his real body anymore. He was hiding in the trees, maneuvering his puppet from there, while having left an illusory clone in his place. Not bad, and it would likely have worked on someone else. But Karen could pinpoint his actual location. Now, while he thinks he's safe is my best opportunity. She pretended to fall for his trap and went after the illusion. Damn, she fell for the clone trick. Sasuke noted with a wince. She didn't. Naruto assured. She let herself move according to the puppet's attacks, slowly coming closer to Kankuro's hiding place, without making it too obvious. Okay, I should be in range, now. Let's not fumble this one up. She dug into her pocket quickly, and got her water pouch out. Gallons of water exploded from the seal once she activated it. Ox, tiger, dog, bird, dog. Water style, water fang technique. The B-rank jutsu, that she had practiced over the last month, shaped the mass of water into a jagged-looking maw. Then the compacted water started spinning, adding to its maiming power. Kankuro noticed too late where it was headed. Oh, shit. He let out. Nice one, Karen. Ino shouted her support. Where did she learn that? Toru asked. He was pretty sure that she hadn't known water style 1 month ago. Naruto shrugged. This was between the third and her. The tree bark had exploded when the water jutsu smashed through it. It had also protected Kankuro from most of the impact. Instead of laying down with his body gouged, he was still able to move, if breathing hard. Okay. I'm done playing. He managed, blood running down his face. His puppet opened its second layer quickly. What is this? Karen thought. The puppet's arsenal exploded, and thin needles flew in every direction, as the puppet spun. Several of these needles hit Karen, and Kankuro as well. He uncorked a vial and downed it quickly. You've lost. He said, simply. The blood loss was getting to him. Karen said nothing, preparing her next jutsu. Ox, tiger, dragon. Wait, what was it again? Why do I feel so sluggish? She asked, slurring. She needed to heal, bite, something? Wait, why would she bite herself? She laughed. Silly. This is my fastest acting concoction. Give up, now, girl. She couldn't think. Everything was spinning. Where was she? What was she doing? What was she? She didn't even realize the puppet caught her inside its belly, until Kankuro gave her the antidote. Winner, Kankuro of Suna. Shisui announced. The crowd clapped. It had been a nice match, as far as ninja deception tricks went. Damn, I lost already. Karen thought glumly. It had been going well, too. If only she hadn't gotten careless, maybe. Why did she always mess things up? Great match, Karen, really thought you had him. Ino cheered. Naruto smiled at her. Told you the old monk dash. Sarutobi-sama had a few tricks to teach. This water technique was amazing. And the way you made him drop his guard, too. She smiled, hesitantly at first, then for real. Maybe this wasn't all that bad, then. Wish me luck. Ino said, bossy as always. Good luck, Ino-san, Karen said with a smile. Naruto mumbled something. What was that? Ino said, cupping her ear in an exaggerated motion. Can't hear depressing people. He rolled his eyes. You can give me a good luck kiss, instead. Ino said, batting her eyebrow exaggeratedly. Naruto looked at her, pretending to consider it. She blushed and ran away, telling him she had changed her mind. Toru gave him a knowing look, and too much eyebrow wiggling, to which he shrugged. That's Ino, she likes joking a lot. He simply said. Tenten, from Konoha, against Yamanaka Ino, also from Konoha. Begin. Shisui declared. She's a Yamanaka, trained under a Sarutobi, with Nara and Akimichi teammates. Tenten thought. Her whole plan probably is to trap me somehow and then take control of my body. I should avoid anything she leaves on the ground, no matter what it is. Tenten saw Ino weave hand signs, likely for a genjutsu technique. She flicked her wrist, and in one fluid motion, an explosive kunai milder in power, of course, this was a fellow Konoha ninja, was sent flying from the tag she had wrapped around it. Ino was forced to abort her technique, and take cover quickly. Tenten felt a minor genjutsu take hold of her. She didn't know what it was for, but was not planning to discover it. The usual dispel didn't work, and her reality was starting to blur, especially her sense of hearing, which seemed to echo more and more. This had the added effect of making her lose her balance and affecting her sight, as well. Well. She smirked. Team Guy had their own methods for dispelling genjutsu. This is going to hurt. She punched herself right in the face. Guy, Kakashi sighed. Guy laughed, a bit sheepishly. I had no other option. With Lee on the team, I had to make sure everybody had a reliable way to get out of illusions. He shrugged. Plus it's working. Tenten spat a bloody tooth. All right, time to end it before she can try anything else. She dug for her orange scroll. She had planned to keep it for later, but Ino was wily. She knew the match could be over quickly. Manipulated tools, firestorm. She unfurled the scroll around her in a whirl. Bombs were ejected at high velocity, covering the floor of the arena. Ino yelped. The floor of the arena shook from the repeated explosions. Ino fell to the ground, propelled by one of them. She was only covered in light burns, as she had already started to run when Tenten got the explosives out. She rushed Ino down. Before she could stand up, Tenten's naginata was unsealed and on her throat. She looked downright pissed, but yielded. Kakashi threw a side look at Asuma. He winced. That one's on me. Ino, Shikamaru, and Koji were trained more as a team unit than solo fighters. Guy looked offended. Don't downplay the power of Tenten's hard work. Asuma threw his hands up in the air. No, not at all. She's a strong ninja, and a very bad matchup for Ino, on top of it. Guy nodded. That's better. I can't believe I lost. Ino screamed, covered in bandages. In the first round. To someone from the village. She looked around, and added. No disrespect, Tenten. Tenten laughed. No offense taken. I've lost in the first round, too. Karen said, a little amused. It's not that bad, you said. I know. Ino sighed. Still. Hypocrite. Naruto whispered. Karen stifled a laugh. What was that? I said good that you quit. Wouldn't want you to get injured for real. Ino glared at him, not believing him. You'll win next time, Ino-chan. Nothing can keep you down. He put a hand on her shoulder, rubbing it. Ino huffed, cheeks a little red. Damn right, I will. Koji looked on, baffled, as his bossy teammate actually seemed relaxed. I think it's time. Sasuke smiled. Yeah. Naruto answered, simply. Let's do our best, then. He held out his fist, and Naruto bumped it. They both jumped into the arena, to Toru's cheers. Ino shouted Naruto good luck, dragging a Shire Karen in it. Niji's sharp eyes noticed his cousin, far away, stare at the Uchiha, with a small smile. Huh. Interesting. He was a bit amused. So, which one are you betting on? Asuma asked, taking a drag of his cigarette. I'm their teacher, I don't bet on them. Senpai, with all due respect. I don't believe you. A new voice called. Uchiha Itachi had sneaked his way into the Jonin's tribune, without most of them noticing. That was par the course, for him. He was wearing a casual black outfit, and was snacking on some dango. Hard to believe this was likely one of the strongest ninjas in the entire world. If Itachi noticed some of the Suna ninjas take a step away, and he likely did, he didn't say anything. Kakashi shrugged. Even if I did bet on them, I wouldn't tell you. Fair enough. Itachi smiled. But my little brother is still going to win this. Uchiha Sasuke, from Konoha. The village cheered for its leader's second son. Sarutobi Naruto, also from Konoha. The legendary third Hokage's grandson in all but name. They cheered just as hard. Begin. Chapter 16, Spellbound. Naruto didn't really want to be a ninja. The only thing he wanted was to learn about chakra and get strong enough to live his life in peace. And the way the village worked, this meant becoming a shinobi. He didn't really believe in all the will of fire ideology, either. That was his honest truth. Konoha was a nice place to live in, but he was sure he would say the same thing if he was born in, let's say, Iwa, Suna, or Kumo. They probably had their own form of patriotic truth. Wish of sand, will of stone, cloud's edict, or something. He snorted. He had people he loved in here, and he wanted to keep them safe. Just like many others, he was sure. This was the best way to bring people in the fold, after all. Even more so when most of the people you were close to as a ninja, were also ninjas. The loop was almost perfect, really. Truth be told, if he knew of a safe way to get out of the Shinobi Corps, he'd take the time to learn everything he could, and then get out. But if there was a way out, he didn't know of it yet. So he would do the 7 years he had signed for, and man, he really should have read the fine print, but well, he had been 6 at the time and then retire. 19 years old retiree. Had a nice ring to it. So yeah. He didn't really want to be a ninja. But, if this were entirely true, why was his blood boiling? Why was he so excited to test himself against Sasuke? Despite himself, he grinned. He felt something deep within him stir. Father is watching. Sasuke thought. Mother was here too, sitting with the rest of the clan. Wait. Is this? He squinted his eyes, then remembered he had the Sharingan. That was Itake, indeed, leaning against the railing, in the Jonin Lodge. He managed to come. Despite himself, he felt giddy. He would show all of them how much he had improved. Here we go. He slipped in the Uchiha loose taijutsu stance. Gaara watched attentively. He would face one of them later on, and he was getting very eager. His brother stepped a bit further away from him. Sasuke threw a fistful of shuriken. Both Naruto and he knew they couldn't drag the fight for too long, considering this was only the first match. They would try to settle this quickly. Naruto dodged to the right, mindful of the fact he had probably hidden a second volley within their shadows. Possibly ninja wire, too. So he rushed him. They exchanged blows. The only reason Naruto was able to keep up with Sasuke's speed was because of sporadic lightning release use. This was the best he could manage for the moment. He tried the electric palm, which Sasuke dodged easily. The Uchiha's fist scuffed his chin in retaliation. All the while, he was trying to make eye contact. Avoid his eyes, Kakashi had said. Sasuke might have been pretty average at genjutsu, for an Uchiha, but he decided not to take the risk. His teammate was faster than him, when he was not using lightning release. He had stronger mid to long range techniques and could also predict his moves when he came into melee range. Overall, the odds were against him. Luckily, he had had a full month to prepare. He put some distance between the two of them. Sasuke let him do it, knowing he had more techniques he could make use of at this range anyway. Naruto put his fingers in the cross shape he had become familiar with. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Toru groaned. He hated the shadow clone technique. Not this again. 2 clones appeared, each packed with a third of his chakra. This should allow them to take a few hits. He hoped. Otherwise, this was a lot of chakra expanded for nothing. Each of them unhooked their staff. This should help prevent Sasuke from just bursting them with taijutsu or weapons. Lightning style, flash step. Their legs wreathed in electricity, the clones dashed to form a triangle against Sasuke, negating some of the advantage his Sharingan gave him. If that wasn't enough, the flashbangs they carried on hand and were ready to throw down at a moment's notice should help. Even if the 2 other Narutos were blinded, the one who made use of it could prepare adequately. Not bad. Guy said. Good footwork on young Naruto, too. Did you teach him this, Kakashi? It had mostly been the sand aim. What's your brother gonna do, Itachi-kun? Asuma asked, curious. He shrugged. Wait and see. His Sharingan eyes were spinning lazily, but the interest in his eyes was real. The crowd roared in approval. Flashy jutsu, clones. Add some fire, explosions, and this was everything the civilians liked about shinobi fights, Sasuke thought. Sasuke's eyes roamed over him and his clones, understanding that he would have to keep his guard high. He also noticed that all 3 Narutos kept their eyes on his upper body, making sure to dodge eye contact. What's more, he could see that the clones had bound their hands with copper wire, and a thin wire linked all three of them. Naruto and his doubles stayed unmoving. Sasuke would see them dash before they did. The Uchiha threw 6 kunai, so fast that most of the audience missed the moment he got them out. 3 were headed straight at the clones, and 3 to the wires. He then leaped in between 2 of them, intent on getting out the triangle. When a clone of Naruto jumped up to intercept him, Sasuke had already weaved the signs for the flame bullet technique. He prepared to let loose, and felt a wire dig into his left shin, pulling him to the ground. The next instant, a powerful electrical shock went through his body. This made him release his hold on his technique early, and miss the clone entirely. He cursed as he was brought back to the ground. He tried to cut the wire, but it was a bit thicker than he thought. Also, he had trouble mustering enough strength, when he was getting lightning shocks every half second. He reached for his chakra. The clones rushed to get him. One of them smashed his staff into his ribcage, making him lose his breath. The second came at him with the electric palm, with the intent of ending it right away. Sasuke saw it coming though and dodged it easily enough. He got another electric shock for his trouble. He grunted, and transformed the chakra he had been cycling into fire. Sasuke grabbed a firm hold of the wire, and the flame went along its length quickly. One of the Narutos yelped as he got burned, before bursting in smoke. Finally, Sasuke leapt away at full speed. The wire had left burn marks around his shin. 2 people can play this game, you idiot. He called out, not sure what came over him. Whenever he and Naruto fought seriously, something overcame him. He had the feeling that he became a different person. One that was way more hot-headed. Still so confident, Itachi? Kakashi asked neutrally. Yes. The 2 clones gave up on the copper wire. His own improvised version of the superior lightning transmission worked well enough, but he wasn't about to risk getting himself set on fire if he could avoid it. Ox. Tiger. Horse. Snake. He focused his chakra in his hand and held it. Sasuke watched curiously as nothing happened. He could see his hand shining brightly, as Naruto came towards him, and probably figured it was a melee attack. Naruto's clone threw a smoke bomb, forcing Sasuke to leap back, keeping his eyes on the cloud. Fuinjutsu, smoke absorption technique. Lighting release, blinding flash. Naruto and his clone had their eyes closed in the smoke so they avoided the worst of it. Even then, particles danced behind his eyelids. Sasuke, well, got the worst of it. My eyes. Shit, it burns. He jumped back, blindly. Naruto and his clone didn't hesitate, sending Sasuke flying away with 2 coordinated, lightning-enhanced staff attacks. They jumped after him. That was pretty nice, Itachi admitted. Keeping Sasuke's eyes on the flashbangs so that he would get blinded by the jutsu he didn't see coming. Guy nodded. Naruto is a crafty little bastard, Kakashi admitted easily. He got weird looks for it. Fire style, fire wall. Naruto only barely managed to avoid getting roasted on the 2 meters high jutsu. His clone didn't. Combined with the chakra he had recovered and expanded, too, he was at a bit less than half his full capacity. Sasuke glared at him, cornea red from having rubbed his eyes. Naruto answered by throwing an explosive kunai at him. He saw Sasuke's eyes widen. Then he waited. He didn't see Sasuke come out of the smoke. Did he dodge, or? A fist hit him in the back of the head, making him eat dirt. Sasuke stood behind him, fist extended. How did he move so fast? Did he learn the body flicker? He didn't think too hard about it. This was unimportant. Focus on Sasuke. He cycled his chakra. He led with a straightforward staff attack, which Sasuke redirected. He whirled around, trying to knock his legs off the ground, and the Uchiha jumped. Sasuke came down with a vertical kick, and Naruto let go of his staff, to his surprise. He caught it with his left forearm. Lightning transformation. The electricity that went through his right arm enhanced his speed and strength. Sasuke only had the time to widen his eyes before the lightning strike technique hit him. This should definitely knock him out. Naruto had used most of his remaining chakra in the blow, confident in his ability to hit him just once, with the effect of surprise. His fist caught Sasuke in the plexus. A perfect hit. Then it went through, like butter. What dash? Sasuke exploded in flames. Your son sure is something, Hokage Dano. The Raikage said in approval. He was entertained. Yes. He is. The proud father admitted. Naruto groaned, covered in burns. His shinobi gear was mostly ruined too, especially the fabric parts. He stood up slowly, removing the remnants of his shirt. Did he hear somebody whistle or was he just out of it? I've been stupid. The real Sasuke got out from the smoke, similar burns covering his skin. You took an explosive note head-on? Naruto asked, dumbfounded. Of course not. He snorted. Just had to make you believe I did. It was a close call, anyway. Ah. He had caught his eyes, hadn't he? The genjutsu Sasuke had placed on him faded. No wonder he wasn't thinking too hard on how Sasuke had moved. He had been under the effect of Sasuke's suggestion. Average at genjutsu for an Uchiha still meant heads above almost any ninja. He could see that Sasuke was getting tired, too. He would try to end this. He weaved through hand signs quickly, ending on Tiger. Fire release, Ember clone technique. A double of Sasuke appeared. Oh, that's what I hit, then. You're not the only one who knows how to make clones, Naruto. Sasuke said with a half smile. He was getting really tired, now. At this point, I don't think I can even make any. They settled for a taijutsu match. A weaponless Naruto weaved under a fist. A knee hit him in the nose. Ow. He dodged the kick aimed at his back. Not the elbow in his liver. God. I hate close combat with Uchihas. At this rate, he'd get knocked out in 2 minutes, at most. Time to improvise. He smiled a bloody grin. When both Sasuke and his clones' attacks reached him, he let his chakra engulf him. Lighting style, depth charge. The fire clone exploded, engulfing both him and a surprised, very real Sasuke in flames. That doesn't look very safe. Karen winced. He probably knows what he's doing. Ino said, tentatively. She was worried, though. Why the hell did you do this? Sasuke shouted, his own hair singed. His arms were raw. He wasn't sure he was going to be able to go on. Naruto grinned, a bit shaky on his feet. I'm not going to let you win easily, Yano. It was time to end it. He'd go in with a flash step and... Yup, anytime now. Why was everything so blurry? God, I'm so igdash. Naruto fell on his back. You know what? I'm good. You won this one, Sasuke. He managed. Wait, what? Sasuke said, in confusion. Winner, Uchiha Sasuke. Shisui declared. The crowd roared. Welcome to the club. Ino said, hiding her own worry, after Toru and Karen had left the infirmary. What club? Losers. Naruto snorted. He was covered in ointments and bandages. Everything hurt. At least I gave my opponent some trouble. What did you say? Kakashi laughed. Naruto seemed in decent spirits, at least. Rock Lee's match against Akimichi Koji was a short affair. The Akimichi was stronger physically, for sure, but Lee was so much faster that there was not much he could do. Uchiha Toru, from Konoha, against Gaara, from Suna. Shisui observed his brother a bit longer than needed. Toru nodded. Begin. You're going to die. Gaara said, flatly. I've heard this one before. Sand exploded from Gaara's gourd. This was not the person he really wanted to kill, the Sarutobi. But he had likely overestimated that one, if he had lost already. Disappointing. By crushing this one, he could also reach the Hokage's son next. Gaara wondered what the man would think when he killed his son. The cork's stopper exploded, and sand rushed out. Toru initiated with a fire jutsu. Uchiha clan hidden art, Phoenix Sage fire technique. He shouted. For the audience. Why must he always be like this? Shisui groaned, hiding his eyes. Itake, who had come down the stairs to join him, just threw a side look. You tended to get the brother you raised. The 7 fireballs halted against Gaara's sand. No damage, then. Sand came to him in a line of vertical spikes. Sharingan on, he sprinted to the right. He drew his Tonto, full speed ahead, and went for Gaara's neck. He came from a clan of ninjas, and had no particular qualms with killing. Especially when it came to somebody like Gaara, who definitely didn't, either. He struck. Ah, shit. His sword was stuck in the sand. He somersaulted away, rather than try to catch his sword. It's yours, now. Gaara crushed it. I see it's going to take more firepower, then. He quickly figured explosive tags did nothing, either. Gaara was getting a bit antsy, it seemed. Probably didn't like having trouble catching him. He still was only decent with the body flicker, compared to Shisui, but that was enough to stay away from the sand. His Sharingan also would allow him to spot any possible trap the sand ninja could set up. There was no point in waiting. If this technique didn't work, he'd have to improvise. He started weaving the hand signs for his most powerful fire jutsu. Bird, dog, bird, ox, horse, ram, snake, monkey, rat, horse, ox, dragon, monkey, snake, monkey, horse, rat, dragon, hare, tiger. Uchiha clan hidden art, dragon's piercing hell strike. He called out, as loud as he could. The Raikage asked. Hokage Dano. I'm getting curious. Are these really Uchiha clan techniques? Fugaku just sighed. Next to him, the third said nothing. This is worse than Minato. At least, he invented his own techniques instead of renaming existing ones. He thought. Toru's cheeks bulged, and his face was sweating from the strain. Gaara watched on, curiously. He almost missed it. A thin spear of compressed flame and heat shot through his automatic defense, turning part of it to glass. For a second, Gaara's heart stopped beating. He couldn't see anything. When he got his breathing under control, he realized that the same thing had happened with his second layer of armor, the one he wore over his entire body. With a grunt, he peeled off the crystallized layer that had protected him from the beam. What was that feeling? Something was in his eyes. He wiped them and his forehead with a hand. Blood. He was bleeding. Ah. Well. Shisui said to Itake. Yes. The sand was too much for him, it seems. Lightning would have done the trick, I think. Too bad he doesn't have any affinity for it. Toru walked toward Gaara, breathing a bit harder. Ah. Well. He scratched his head. Fire style has never been my strong suit. Don't know what I was thinking here. What did you do? Gaara asked. Oh, wow. It actually scratched you. He said, surprised. I will kill you. Toru said nothing. He had said it before already, but the air around him seemed heavier this time. Better not to provoke him too much. Well. His strongest elemental attack had failed him. He had no way of getting through the sand, he knew as much now. Luckily, he had one last weapon. If this failed too, he would give up as well. What is he going to do? Naruto, who had managed to crawl his way to the stands again, sneaking past a nurse asked. Nothing good, most likely. Sasuke answered. He knew this expression. Gaara let his chakra flow freely. The earth reacted accordingly, and sand rose from it. He would take his time. No. He would do it in an instant. Crush him before the proctor, who definitely was related to him, reacted. First came the wave. Will you forfeit, Gaara of the desert? Toru asked. What? He thought. He said nothing. I said. Toru repeated. Will you forfeit, Gaara of the desert? What kind of empty threat is this? Gaara ground out. Toru shrugged. No threat here. Just asking. Die instead. Sand projectiles forced Toru to run. Gaara started using his hands, making them go even faster. Some of them nicked him. He wouldn't be able to keep it up for long. Toru asked again, breath ragged. Will you forfeit, Gaara of the desert? Gaara snorted. He knew what he had planned to answer. Why would I forfeit, when you're about to die? What came out instead was I forfeit. Gaara blinked. What had just dash? Toru beamed. Great. Winner, Uchiha Toru. The crowd was too confused to know how to react. There were a few timid claps, from people who had guessed this was some ninja technique, and some jeers, even. Toru took it in stride, waved at the audience and left the arena sprinting, before Gaara could understand what had just happened. When he did, the Kaze cage had to step into the arena to calm him down from his rage. In the end, only the presence of the two other cage one with the threat of a fully matured Sharingan prevented an international accident. Naruto blinked. What happened here? Ino asked, just as confused. You mean, why Gaara gave up, I guess? Toru asked. They nodded. Well, he looked at them very seriously. Yes. They were hanging on to his lips. Is a family secret. He laughed. You little dash, Ino started, her temper already flaring. Toru was only laughing harder. Trigger. Sasuke said. What did you say? Naruto asked. He used a trigger. Karen asked. Sasuke nodded. Yes. My brother showed me how it worked. He rubbed his head, bashful. I'm pretty bad at it though. Not like Itachi. He taught you, didn't he? Toru pouted. Why do you always have to ruin it? Sasuke ignored him. I assume the trigger was a word. Forfeit, right? He nodded. Yeah, I practiced this specific trigger during most of last month. I still kinda messed the execution up, I guess. Oh, that's why you repeated the same question over and over again? Naruto asked. Yeah. After he heard the trigger, the next sentence he would try to make with the word in it was supposed to come out as I forfeit. I forgot to take into account that this was a bit too specific. He shrugged, before continuing. Anyway, according to the rules, a forfeit is a forfeit. The genjutsu was pretty light, in the end. It was the only way to make sure he didn't notice I had cast my jutsu on him. And it would only work one time. So. When did you cast it? Toru grinned but didn't elaborate. Before the match, then. There was no explicit rule here, which in ninja terms basically meant it was allowed. I'm a ninja. That was all the answer Naruto needed. The proctor called for an hour-long break, for the contestants to rest and heal up by their own means. Then the second round would begin. Chapter 17, Their Eyes. There was some discussion between the cage. After some back and forth, the Kaze cage decided to leave with Gaara, along with his escort. While it was highly unusual to leave this early, the Hokage had no qualms about it. Gaara was obviously unstable, and getting angrier every minute since his forfeit, so if the Kaze cage wanted to deal with the problem on its own, that was on him. He offered to have his son, Itachi, escort them part of the way, with the promise that he could tame a tailed beast, should it come to it. The Kaze cage just glared at him in answer, assuring him he was more than capable of handling his village matters. More power to him. Kankuro just made a disgusted noise, resentment building up inside him. Now he'd be staying for his match with only their sensei, Baki, and Temari left behind. Their father could obviously not be bothered. Gaara had always ruined everything for him. Toru let out a sigh of relief. Yeah. I really thought he'd try to kill me today. I don't think he would try anything outside of a match. Sasuke said. He'd get into too much trouble. Naruto just threw him a dubious look. Gaara didn't seem like the sort of person who would care about petty things like laws. Yasui, from Kyumo against Hyuga Neji, from Konoha. The Hyuga clan was pretty quiet, when it came to cheering. There were some that were unhappy about the only member of their clan to reach the finals being from the branch house. Nonetheless, there was a general sense of confidence. Neji was the most talented ninja the clan had produced this generation, just like his dad had been before him. Hinata was strong, and so was Hanabi, no one would dare say the opposite. But Neji was a true prodigy. When he had come into the arena, facing the strongest genin Kumo had sent into the exams, Tokai, he had felt nothing. Well, besides the usual contempt he had for the way his clan did things. Niji believed in strength. That's why he had trained so hard his whole life. He loved Hinata like a sister, too. But then again, his dad still loved his brother. It never prevented some resentment from building up. Niji was afraid that someday, when Hinata took the leadership of the clan, he would feel the same. It was a big cage, the one he was in, but it was a cage all the same. He slipped into the basic gentle fist stance. Niji would remind the main branch and the elders that birth meant nothing on its own. Yasui had known that the match would be difficult. Tokai, who had been defeated by Niji 2 hours earlier, had been his teammate. He had been the team's best close-range fighter. The fact he had decided to forego melee combat, opting for keeping distance between him and Niji was bad news. Yasui was worse than Tokai at ninjutsu. He specialized in genjutsu, and had counted on Niji being defeated in the first round. His backup plan had been to fall back on thrown weapons, but he had seen how fast the Hyuga was. This was confirmed when he just deflected any weapon Tokai had thrown at him. Genjutsu didn't work on him at all, it seemed. Not the visual ones, not the auditory ones either. A single gentle fist strike to the chest, and he had to give up, his chakra out of reach. Winner, Hyuga Niji. The Raikage sighed. He didn't think Tsuyoe had much of a chance against the Uchiha, either. Kumo might as well be out of the exam already. So much for showing their might. Kankuro's match against Tenten was a set affair. The Sand Genin had been angry, and he had opted for a brutal rushdown instead of his usual reliance on deception. Tenten had barely had the time to get her scrolls out before she was caught in the razor-sharp arms of Karasu. She gave up once she realized that just like his needles, they were also covered in poison. Just like the Raikage had predicted, Suzuki was faster, smarter and stronger than Tsuyoe. The girl from Kumo took a fireball head-on, and was sent to the infirmary right away. Rock Lee vs. Uchiha Toru, both from Konoha. Begin. Toru had tried to get Lee to look him in the eye the whole time, but the older genin had made it a point not to even look in his general direction. He was no Shisui, and no Itaki yet, he thought, so trapping him in an illusion by simply using a finger was out of his reach. He'd have to settle this one the usual way. Lee sent him a thumbs up, staring at his feet resolutely. Bemused, he gave him one back. Lee removed the ankle weights he had been wearing right away. When they hit the floor in a plume of smoke, the crowd roared. Wait, has he been wearing this the whole time? Before the smoke cleared, Toru rushed through 3 hand signs, releasing the fastest fire technique he knew. He didn't have time to play here, it seemed. Fire release, burst flare. A compact ball of heat and flame exploded from his mouth, aimed at the cloud. It went right through. Lee was already gone. Even with his Sharingan on, he barely dodged the kick aimed at his head. He managed to duck, but the following punch that he parried rattled his whole wrist. He quickly used the body flicker, putting some distance between the two of them. Thrown weapons would be useless here, because Lee was simply too fast. Too bad his Tonto had been crushed. There was no way he'd manage to trap him with wire, as he was also stronger than him. He would likely have to catch Lee in a genjutsu, then. Toru released a fire-style, smoke screen technique without calling its name. Behind its cover he weaved another technique, and held it. He threw a few shuriken as a quick distraction, and jumped back. When Lee appeared next to him, he released it. Heaven and Earth Reversal was a genjutsu that worked on a simple premise. The direction of down became up, and inversely. Lee tripped and realized immediately he was trapped, but this momentary distraction allowed Toru to catch his eye. Same in jutsu, Nirvana. No dash. Lee tried. The genjutsu took hold, and he struggled to keep his eyes open. Toru breathed hard. This had taken a lot of chakra from him. It was a technique that forced the victim into a deep sleep, tied directly to their chakra network. It usually took the help of somebody else to wake them up. Shisui had gotten a lot of mileage from that one, over the years. It prevented a lot of unnecessary killing. He slowly walked away, keeping an eye on Lee, who was swaying. He was mumbling something, and with his Sharingan on, Toru could read his lips clearly. I will not. How the hell was he still standing? Something weird was happening with his chakra. It had disappeared? No. Most of it had gathered around Lee's brain. Ah. This was bad. Guy. You taught him how to use the gates? At his age? Kakashi asked, reproachful. Guy nodded, looking uncharacteristically serious. Taijutsu is all Lee has. It was his decision to learn how to open them, and I would not stand in between him and his dream. Still. The gates. You know they take a heavy toll on the user. Asuma said. Guy nodded. He would know. Lee's chakra rose in intensity. It moved to the right side of his brain. Toru could see it all with too much clarity, and he didn't need the Byakugan for that. It then went down to his spinal cord. Lee's eyes opened, entirely white. The bulging veins all over his body and his red skin made him look like a freaky version of a Hyuga. He was still struggling with the genjutsu, Toru could see. That was his only hope. Whatever Lee was preparing would be too much for him. I will not lose. Ah, come on. Gate of pain. Open. Lee's chakra started overflowing from his body, and his nose bled. The illusion shattered. I give dash. Lee crossed the distance between them in a fraction of an instant, and his Sharingan saw it in more detail than he would care to remember later. His fist smashed into his stomach and he flew straight into the arena wall. Shisui called the match right away. Winner, Rock Lee. Damn. Due to his exhaustion he could barely stand after this show. Lee was forced by the medic team to give up on the next match. Despite his vocal protests, Guy agreed that it might be the safest option. Lee looked betrayed at first, which looked pretty comical on his expressive face, but the explanation of just what sort of permanent damage he would risk even if he didn't use any more gates today ended up convincing him. He sulked a bit, but he could fight Niji another day. His teammate had promised they would. Even if it's at the Jonin exams. Niji had joked. That had been very nice of him. Niji stepped in the arena for the third time today, facing Kankuro from Suna. He was not feeling tired at all. If anything, his excitement at the idea of possibly reaching the finals kept him more awake than he had felt in a while. The teenager from Suna looked angry. Likely something to do with what had happened with Gaara, then. Probably his father as well. Even if Niji hadn't known that the Sand Trio were the Kazekige's children, the resemblance was so obvious he would have picked it up easily. Niji would not blame a guy for complicated familial relationships. He had his own issues with his own father, too. And that was not even going into how he felt about the main branch. Despite his resentment, and hatred for the way the Hyuga clan worked, Hisashi had still chosen to live as a slave to the main branch. Niji had promised himself that he would not do the same, no matter what it cost. When he would finally have the strength for it, he would choose freedom. Kankuro initiated with a volley of needles, sent from his puppet, Karasu. Niji took notice of the hidden mechanism. He would remember that this one released the poison needles. His eyes scanned over the arsenal of weapons hidden within the puppet. Blades, needles, arrows, an opening, smoke bombs, detachable head, removable arms. More blades. A lot of these seemed to be covered in poison. Kankuro was also carrying a short blade on himself, strapped to his wrist. 3 kunao, 7 shuriken in his pouch. A smoke bomb, a flashlight as well. This was no problem for Niji. He could close his eyes and see through his own eyelids as clearly as if they were open. Such tricks only worked on the Uchiha. In the stands, Sasuke clenched his fist. I don't like Niji. Huh? Ino asked. You guys never really got along, did you? That's nothing new. I felt the need to say it out loud. Oh, okay. Naruto patted his shoulder. It was an Uchiha thing, he guessed. The Suna ninja was getting frustrated with the way the match was going. His movements were becoming more jerky, as his arsenal of weapons depleted. He didn't dare send his puppet into melee range, fearing that the Niji would just smash right through it with some unknown gentle fist technique. Niji was amused. He was worried for the wrong reasons. The Hyuga left his guard open on purpose, wanting to move things along. Kankuro seized it. He triggered yet another mechanism inside his puppet. The arms fell out of their sockets, and the chest opened. The seal inside let a cast iron ball roll into the opening. Ah, so it was cannon, then. The powder erupted and with a bang, and the ball flew toward Niji. The chakra he had gathered as a layer over his skin became visible to the naked eye. His feet dug into the ground. Heavenly rotation. He spun. The audience roared. He can do the rotation too. Hinata wondered out loud. She had only learned it very recently, after the debacle of the Forest of Death. Hisashi looked on with pride, not looking entirely surprised. He himself had never learned it, but he knew how Niji could be about these things. He would make this personal. Her father said nothing. The cannonball had just exploded harmlessly against the spinning chakra dome the Konoha genin had created. That was a bad surprise. He had to attack now, while he was recovering from the spin. Karasu moved. Niji stepped aside and severed the chakra strings. Kankuro panicked. He could easily create new threads, but he had not expected this to happen right now. Niji was too close. He would have to. A palm hit him in the plexus. His control over his chakra faded. There was no particular emotion in the pupilless white eyes of his opponent. How he hated him, at that moment. Winner, Hyuga Niji. Lee now being out of the competition, Niji would face Sasuke after a half-hour break. The Raikage sighed again. I know the exam being held in your village tends to favor your own ninja. But, this really feels like I'm just here to watch the next Leaf Prodigies showcase. Fugaka threw him a wry smile. I thought this was the whole point, Raikage Dano. The Raikage's eyebrows shot up. Then he laughed a booming laugh, slapping a heavy arm on the Hokage's back. True enough. Kyumo will definitely win next time, though. Fugaka winced. The friendly slap felt like it had shuffled a rib or two around. He wondered if it had been on purpose. It's time to prove you're stronger than Niji, now. Toru said, nodding wisely. He means, if you actually are. Naruto added, helpfully. Sasuke snorted. Well, I guess we'll see. He then added. I at least know I'm stronger than you, Naruto. For now, maybe. Naruto nodded, magnanimous. Yeah, Naruto will win next time. Ino nodded, her arms crossed. Karen smiled at their antics. Good luck, Niji. Your hard work will pay off. Guy encouraged. Thank you. Tenten smiled. Niji was the strongest of the Leaf Genin, there was nothing more to say. Lee and Niji exchanged a look of understanding. Next time, it would be both of them. For the final match. Hyuga Niji and Uchiha Sasuke. The crowd echoed their approval. It had been a great show, and they were counting on both members of the two strongest clans in Konoha to provide a good finale. Begin. Chapter 18, Chunin exams conclude. Niji observed his opponent, and reviewed what he already knew. Sasuke was fast, comparable to Lee's when he took his weights off. Niji was faster, and had been fighting and winning against Lee for years. The Sharingan would allow Sasuke to keep up with him. Some would. He wasn't sure what each tomo meant, but he knew that Sasuke's Sharingan was not fully matured yet. Lee was stronger physically, and had more stamina than the Uchiha. Genjutsu wouldn't work on him, not even with the Sharingan. The only possible trouble might come from his fire jutsu, then. He'd go for close-range combat. Not that the Hyuga really favored anything other than up-close and personal. You think he has a plan? Naruto asked Toru. Huh? Of course he does. I think. Why do you ask? I don't know, he really seems to have something against Niji. He doesn't show it too much, but he can be pretty emotional sometimes. Pfft. Don't sweat it. He won't let pettiness cloud his mind. Sasuke observed his opponent, and tried to formulate a plan. Niji was faster, and a good close-range fighter. Not Uchiha good, of course, he thought, but close. His eyes were decent against Genjutsu, too. Not as good as the Sharingan, but really decent, overall. He'd have to rely on his fire jutsu, then. Then maybe he'd get close and beat the shit out of the arrogant Hyuga. Niji bobbed and weaved through the Phoenix fire jutsu that Sasuke initiated with. He could also see the shuriken hidden in the fireballs, as well as the wire the Uchiha held. His vacuum palm slammed into his face, making him flip backwards, and he barely caught himself. Niji saw Sasuke shake his head clear. This probably didn't feel too good. He gave him no time to recover, dashing off with a blast of chakra. Sasuke's Sharingan predicted his trajectory, and through the feint Niji was leading with. He was able to deflect the strikes, as well as notice what Niji was aiming for. Sasuke held a one-handed tiger seal. Niji's eyes widened. He hadn't known that he was able to do this. Fire release, veil. He clapped his hand on the floor, and a white flash erupted. Gah! Niji closed his eyes too late. He was temporarily blinded. Sure, the Byakugan allowed him to see through his eyelids, but that was only useful if he saw the attack coming. A flashbang, he could predict. A fire jutsu he had never seen was more problematic. Sasuke made sure to kick him as strong as he could in the face. This guy. Sasuke weaved signs that Niji could not see very clearly in his state. Two fire clones appeared, and sprinted toward him. Behind them, Sasuke weaved hand signs again. Fire style, cranium carver. The clones jumped high up in the sky, dodging the small ball of fire Sasuke had created. When it came in contact with the ground, it spread at a very fast rate, covering a huge area. There was no way Niji could jump in the sky, where the clones were awaiting him. He dug into the floor once more. He hoped there was nothing else he had missed, while half blind. Kaiten. Niji spun, and while the flames crashed against his protection, they just went around him. Damn, that's a nice jutsu. Naruto said. Why did he never show us before? I think he might have learned it only recently. Toru shrugged. It was a B rank he had seen some older clan members use in the past. Niji slowed down once he was sure the flames were at a lower intensity. He had dipped too much into his reserves by maintaining such a long rotation. Well, Sasuke's technique probably had taken a lot from him as well. He could see him breathing hard already. The clones were behind him, he'd have to avoid them. When had this wire wrapped around his torso? Ah, damn. Flame went down the length of the ninja wire, courtesy of the clone holding it, who had detonated himself. Niji could only shield himself by using the first step of the kaiten. Without the rotation part, it was a pretty bad shield, admittedly. This rotation thing really is sweet. I wonder if I can learn it. Do you have good chakra control? Karen asked. Nah. Why? It looks like he's pushing chakra out of every node from his body. I think it would require a lot of finesse, she said, observing Niji. Forget it, then. It hurt to move. His shirt was mostly burned, and his hair was singed. Burns littered his arms too, as he had used them to shield his face while he rolled himself on the floor to smother the flames. The worst part was that the Uchiha seemed at least a little bit amused by his situation. He could see his chakra levels, though. He was almost running empty. Niji, on the other hand, was still in combat shape, even though this wouldn't last for long. Niji pushed his chakra out, giving him enough slack to slip out of the wire, surprising Sasuke, who had thought him as good as gone. He threw a shuriken at him, which Niji dodged. The clone behind him threw himself on them. The resulting explosion burned his back and more of his hair. He didn't slow down. Sasuke winced, as he probably realized there was no way he'd outrun him. Niji read his emotions on his face. There was surprise the clone trick hadn't worked. The consternation at seeing Niji in a better shape than he was. The frustration at coming so far, only to lose in the finals, in front of his clan. The resignation to the fact that he could not beat him in a taijutsu match. Then, acceptance? How strange. He settled in a familiar stance. Wait. This. Uchiha bastard. He had copied his gentle fist stance. After all the hard work he had put into learning the forms. The endless hours of toiling, of sweat and blood. Uchiha Sasuke took them for himself in an instant. Sasuke closed his eyes for a second, let out a long breath. He fell into an almost meditative trance. His eyes opened, Sharingan spinning wildly. He rushed at Niji, his movements perfectly symmetrical to his. Okay. That's pretty risky. Shisui said to Itachi. I had nothing to do with this. This is all him. Itachi muttered. Yeah, I kind of figured. Hisashi. The Hyuga clan head asked, deadly serious. Did you teach him this? Did he learn how to do the 64 palms from you? Hisashi snorted, arms folded. How could I have, when I don't know it in the first place? I know my place. Hayashi-sama. The same old resentment. Hayashi closed his eyes. Then Niji might be even more of an anomaly than we thought. He then frowned. But to see it mimicked by an Uchiha. Maybe I need to speak with our Hokage. Niji fell into the stance he had practiced over and over again. He envisioned himself within the center of an 8 trigrams circle. In front of him, Sasuke did the same, likely without even knowing what the mental process was supposed to be like. Niji held back his anger at him. It would just help the Uchiha. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. He announced, voice clear. This was the secret taijutsu of the Hyuga main branch. In a mockery of it, Sasuke announced the same. 8 trigrams. 64 palms. He probably didn't even understand how offensive that was to the Hyuga as a whole. Part of him, the one that wanted to be free, would have found this amusing. But mostly, he was too angry to find the humor in the situation. Niji leapt forward, just as Sasuke did. 2 palms. 2 palms. His fingers hit Sasuke's, who were covered in chakra, in a very crude gentle fist imitation. 4 palms. 4 palms. 2 more strikes. None reached his target, as Sasuke was a perfect mirror. 8 palms. 8 palms. 4 more strikes cancelled each other. Niji stopped announcing them. Hearing the faker mimic him was too much to bear. 8 more consecutive strikes. One of them hit Sasuke's wrist tenketsu. He didn't falter. 16 consecutive attacks. A total of 32. He touched Sasuke's chest tenketsu, as well as his right shoulder. He screamed. 32 consecutive strikes. 64 palms. 2 more attacks reached Sasuke, who grunted in pain. The last attacks cancelled each other again, leaving both of their hands shaky. Sasuke was breathing hard, but he was still standing. The audience roared its approval. The Hokage palmed his face. He'd likely have to play diplomat with the Hyuga again. Was Itachi this much trouble? No. Probably not. The Raikage laughed. This is even better than the time that Konoha Genin dressed up like the Yellow Flash during the IWHN exams. Fugaku winced. That particular event had likely set back the Konoha IWA relationship a year or two. Wait, he can do that? Ino asked. Is this allowed? I guess. Toru said, dumbfounded. We never really had a rulebook for this stuff. Niji saw the displeasure on his clan's faces. Well, the main branch. Whether it was because he had taught himself one of their most precious techniques, or because an Uchiha had used it as well, he couldn't tell. Speaking of said Uchiha, Niji couldn't help but wonder how much he had copied in this fight. He had used most of his strongest techniques, and his opponent's Sharingan had been on. He could also see a third tomo had formed into one of his eyes. You will regret doing this, he said, simply. Make me. Niji scoffed. So you can steal more of my techniques. If you wish, sure. You're acting pretty confident for somebody who's already out of chakra. You're being very talkative for somebody who won't even beat me up properly. Niji couldn't help it. He let out a short laugh. Well, you asked for it. Try to copy this one, I don't care anymore. And he really didn't. 8 trigrams, 128 palms. What did he say? The Hyuga elder asked, outraged. I think we've heard the same thing as you did, father. Hayashi muttered, eyes hard. How had Niji managed to hide that he had learned these techniques? Hisashi said nothing, but there was unmistakable pride in his eyes. Sasuke groaned. Why did I even goad him into this? He stepped up all the same. It went badly. He managed to follow the first 32 strikes. He fumbled before the 64th. And got hit by most of the second half. Apparently, the strikes did more than just close off your chakra network. He could barely stand, or keep the Shari non-active. He sighed. I think there's no way for me to go on. Niji looked at him, almost surprised he'd admit as much. I give up. In that case. Shisui said, appearing in the arena in a flash. Hyuga Niji is the winner of this edition of the Chunin exams. The audience started to clap, and Niji basked in it. Man, I really thought you had him. Toru said, once Sasuke had come back from the infirmary. What was your plan like? Winning, mostly. Sasuke answered, half amused. Thought so. Naruto muttered. Hey, I tried keeping him away from me. Sasuke said, immediately on the defensive. How do you fight someone faster than you, who has some annoying eye technique? Should have asked me, I've got plenty of experience. Naruto snorted. Sasuke laughed. All Niji got from the main branch were terse nods, besides Hayashi, who acknowledged his talent, and promised to shield him from angry main house members' possible actions. And Hinata, who was visibly happy for him. He'd celebrate with the branch house. He hadn't expected much more, to be honest. The fifth closed off the exams with a short speech, thanking the audience for their presence again, and the candidates for participating. The promotions would be decided in a week's time, after some deliberation. Sasuke and Toru left to meet their clan. Naruto noticed a spring in Sasuke's step once he saw his brother waiting for him with a smile. He left with Ino and Karen to meet Sakura. 2 days later, Karen was set to leave for Kusa. Well. I guess it's farewell. She said, quietly. Sakura stared at her. Farewell? It's just for some time. You'll come back, right? Why yes. She perked up. Definitely. I'd love to. You can stay with me, next time. Ino said, before Naruto could propose the same thing. We've got the room. So do we. Sakura added. Thanks, Ino, Sakura. Karen smiled, eyes a bit misty. And thanks, Naruto. For everything. It wasn't much, really. You're always welcome here. He shrugged. Ino got all of them into a hug, somehow. Let's keep in touch, in the meantime, I'll give you my address. Naruto finished. Sure. She said, happily. Neither of them knew that they would never be able to meet up like this in Konoha again. With the exams over, Naruto settled into his routine of training and sparring once more. Reading, too, but since he left this to the clones, he didn't really count it as something he did himself. He focused on improving his chakra control, for now. Everything else seemed like it would benefit from it directly. Lighting release, speed, stamina. Hell, even strength, and reflexes. Once you became good enough at it, you could just keep everything on autopilot. Ninjas were stronger, faster, and thought faster than civilians, due to the benefits of having chakra circulating through their bodies, even passively. Improving your mastery over it would make this difference even more pronounced. He would still train his body with his team, but there was only so much he could do to improve before puberty hit. Sasuke and Niji had the advantage of centuries of eugenics, with the goal of making the Hyuga and Uchiha with faster, more limber bodies. On the other side of the spectrum, you had the Akimichi, who favored raw strength and fat storage. Sure, you could get the odd thin, Akimichi and larger Uchiha, but it usually took a lot more effort than leaning into their innate advantages. Sarutobi were somewhat diverse, as they had never really focused on a specific type of conditioning. Hiruzen was short and limber, had been his first son was tall and slender, and Asuma was basically closer to a bear than a man. Naruto was kind of curious where he'd fit. Sarutobi-ren had been pretty unremarkable in this sense, and he knew nothing about his late mother, since nobody else really did. Oh, and he was learning what he could about Fuinjutsu. It really was a long process. Naruto had been called to the tower. He arrived early. The Hokage nodded to him, ever cordial, and told him to wait until everyone else was here. Neji, Sasuke and Toru filed in. I thought it was about the Chunin exams, but well. Even Naruto is here. Toru whispered to Sasuke, who stifled a laugh. Naruto kicked his shin. He yelped. Neji threw them a dark look. The fifth cleared his throat. Congratulations are in order. Ah, so it was about the exams then. They nodded in respect. Good job, all of you. His eyes lasted upon Toru and Sasuke a bit longer, pride shining through. He let out a short laugh. Some things could definitely have gone smoother, for sure. Sasuke blushed. He knew this was about the finals. But politics and a few rash moves aside, all four of you have proved your strength in the exams. The former Team 8 members have reported your intervention in the Forest of Death, too. There are not that many people ready to face a Jinchuriki to help your comrades. What's a Jinchuriki? The Hokage continued. I know that time will smooth out all your rougher edges. He unsealed 4 jackets. All 4 of you are Chunin. Grow strong, and serve the village, and your clans well. There really wasn't that much difference between being a reserve genin and being a Chunin. Sure, he could now pull status over Ino when she was particularly pushy, and it didn't seem to get old. But he could now take on C ranks alone, and the pay was worth it, ranging from between 30,000 and 100,000 ryo. He couldn't send clones to do them for him, yet. He'd get there someday. After a month of this new routine of training with Kakashi, they were still his team, technically, even though he didn't have to train them anymore. The Hokage assigned Sasuke a diplomatic C-rank mission in the Land of Wind. He could go with a team of his choice, with 1 or 2 teammates. He chose to ask Toru and Naruto, of course. It had seemed simple enough, on paper. Oversee the construction of a well, built with Konoha funds, near an oasis that had suffered from drought. Naruto prepared supplies for a long trip. The old man slipped him a scroll containing a couple things, just in case, too. Biwako gave him a first aid kit, and some reading about medical jutsu. Kano Amaru, the big baby, gave him a tearful hug, and he made him promise to prank the old man for him. So, when are you coming back? Ino asked, worrying her lower lip. He really had done it, this time, getting promoted without waiting for her. And now he was leaving for faraway places, too? She'd show him. Next time, she'd become a Chunin herself. Then he'd have no choice but to. She blushed. To what, exactly? Naruto shrugged. Sakura had been more casual about saying bye, and he wondered why Ino was like this about it. It won't be more than a month, at most. That's pretty long. Will you write to me? Can't promise. I don't know if we're going to have access to anything like post or, well, water. Oh. She looked disappointed. Don't worry, Ino-chan. When I get back, I'll invite you to this nice tea place that just opened up. Like a date. She perked up, cheeks red. I guess. What was the difference, even? Then it's a date. Don't meet any cute wind girl there, okay? She kissed his cheek and left running before he could react. What was that about? He wondered, bemused. Sasuke greeted him with a smile and a fist bump at the gate. Toru arrived late, having gotten in trouble for trying to set his bakery tab on his older brother. Kakashi saw them off with a wink. A month later, only 2 of them would return to Konoha. One would have stronger eyes, and they would bleed any time he made use of them. Chapter 19, The Forlorn Oasis. The trek to the desert took a bit over 4 days. The landscape changed quickly. From lush trees, to less trees, to no trees at all. Sand started, and there was the border to the Land of Wind. Then they had to go through an ancient mine to reach their destination, passing through rocky mountains. The desert is divided into several regions. Sasuke said. Since when are you a geography expert? Naruto teased. Ever since Kakashi tried to lead us to Tanzaku as a practical joke, I'd guess. Toru tried. The huge scroll he was lugging for this mission was making him sweat bullets. Sasuke ignored them. The massive peaks to the south are what separates us from Suna. The center is the hottest part, and Suna is located a bit more to the east. Why the hell would they build a village near the hottest, driest part of the world? Toru wondered. It's a good place to defend, because basically no one wants to endure the trip with an entire army. And there's not that many resources in this desert, either. Once they set up some farmlands, they were mostly self-sustaining. They only set up trade routes later on. Sasuke answered. Naruto nodded. Hiruzen had said something similar. Sarutobi-sama said that was how the village of Whirlpool was founded, too. Far away, in an unattractive location. Until they became a real threat, everybody left them alone. Naruto sometimes wondered why he looked so wistful when talking about the now-gone village, but had never asked. Maybe when he came back. The desert was extremely hot during the day. The sun set, turning the sky red. Then it got almost as cold during the night. The three Nuchinin huddled around the campfire. Sasuke promised himself he'd learn some fire technique to avoid feeling this cold ever again. As soon as he got back. The village of Isago, more than 50 kilometers away from Suna, had been built near an oasis. It must have been beautiful before the drought. By picturing what the now rotten palm trees must have looked like, the patches of yellowed, dry grass, it was easy to see why it had once been called the jewel of the desert. The stone architecture was still holding up well, and was apparently typical for this region. It was the first time either of the boys saw this type of stone block buildings. It looked very different from Konoha in every way. A man greeted them at the village's entrance. He gave them water and led them to their accommodation for the coming weeks. The man, named Kanjuro, gave them a briefing on the general situation. Suna had removed its troops from the village when the drought came, preferring to focus on more important locations, such as the mining towns to the south of Suna, or protecting the caravan routes from more opportunistic bands of thieves. Isago had had a trade route set with Konoha once, and they had leveraged this relationship. In exchange for funding the construction of an advanced well, they would sell their products, animal skins and wool, fruit, and oil at discounted prices over the next 10 years. It was a deal Konoha was happy to accept. My fat dash. The Hokage also instructed us to deliver this to you, Kanjuro-san. Sasuke said, handing him an expensive-looking scroll. Thank you, Shinobi-san. May I ask what? Plans for building an aquifer on your own, should you need to do so again. As well as emergency water reserves. It is not that much, but if used sparingly, it should cover the village's needs for the next 3 weeks, and by then, the aquifer should hopefully be done. He motioned to Toru, who unclasped the big one he had been carrying. Kanjuro looked up in gratitude. This must be a gift from the Providence. I thank you humbly, and your Hokage as well. He said, bowing deeply. As they left, Toru muttered something about this having nothing to do with spirituality. He had to carry this huge scroll for days. Sasuke elbowed him. The aquifer's construction was well underway. It would still take more than 2 months, at the rate they were going. Time Sasuke didn't think they had, the allotted time for the mission had been a single month. And, if he were completely honest with himself, he would admit that he didn't particularly want to spend 2 months in the desert heat. They had done some construction work in the past, and they knew how to follow a plan well enough. Naruto had his clones, too. He thought about it for a night, and figured there was nothing else they could really do. And that's how he roped his team into building an aquifer. These kids sure work hard, don't they? At this rate, we'll have water again in no time. I think the short black-haired one winked at me. And why is he wearing no shirt? He's going to get heat exhaustion. Maayan. This takes forever. Toru whined. His shirt was nowhere to be found. He had gotten sunburned in the first days, but by now he was getting used to it somewhat, sporting a healthy tan. Sasuke ignored him, digging deeper with his pickaxe. One Naruto brought him his refilled water gourd, from which he drank greedily. He never was sure whether this one was the original, or if he was bringing more stone down. They used a system of ropes to move the stones in and out. When they came without anything in hand, they would just walk up and down the walls. There were about 10 people digging at any point in time, most of them civilians. The village had no real ninjas, or people trained in the shinobi arts. Sometimes, during evening time, Naruto and Toru took turns explaining some basics about chakra. It would likely not change their lives, their kids, maybe, though, they were young enough, but just knowing how to use it could speed up their recovery, and grant them greater strength, vitality. Plus, they seemed interested, so it was not much of a pain. The people were very friendly, once you got past their cold exterior, and most nights, they were invited to eat at their homes. Now, Sasuke just hoped Toru would not manage to get them in trouble by flirting with the wrong person. Why the hell was he like this, even? He was even younger than Naruto, by almost a full year. There was no chance he had reached puberty already. God, what would he even be like in 3-4 years? He snorted. It seemed like Toru's time training with Itachi had just made him even more excitable. He could understand it, some would. Itachi was a bit too reserved. They trained as they could. While digging, they refined their chakra control, and built up their strength, as well as their stamina. During lunch break, they shared whatever interesting tidbit they had heard or read. Some stupid jokes as well. Both Toru and Naruto found that provoking Sasuke brought joy to their lives. They sparred during the evening, before eating. Then they basically passed out. After around 2 weeks and a half, they reached water. A missive was sent to Suna, confirming the completion of the well. The joy the villagers felt was contagious and an improvised party was thrown. Toru danced with a cute girl with tan skin, and would not shut up about her for the next few days. They spent the last days making sure everything was running as it should, and that aquifer was up to standard. Again, I cannot thank you young ones enough. Kanjuro said, bowing for what felt like the millionth time. It's fine, really. Sasuke said, a bit embarrassed. It's not much, but please take this. He handed them 3 vertical silver bar pendants. This is something our artisans made for you. Sasuke took all 3, surprised. Thank you very much, Kanjuro-san. We'll treasure them. He never had cared much for jewelry, but this was a nice gift. He would make an exception. He handed the 2 others to his team. The 3 of them bowed at once. They left at sunset. There was something strange about the desert. Something that sounded like a distant roar in the night. They had already started hearing it when they were in Isago, during the last days, but the villagers had just told them it happened, from time to time. The sand felt like it moved toward the south. That was Suna's direction, Sasuke thought uneasily. Naruto proposed to keep on going, apparently just as disturbed as he was. All 3 of them agreed, and they dashed across the dunes, using their chakra to stay above the sand, and gliding down once they reached their tops. The sound seemed to be getting louder. Then it stopped entirely. The sand didn't stop moving, though. 2 hours later, they felt chakra so ominous and thick they could almost see it. Something was coming toward them, from the sky. They accelerated. It wasn't enough. Something dropped in front of them, almost soundlessly. The sand parted, revealing what was hidden behind it. Toru paled. Oh, fuck no. He whispered. I've finally found you. Sweat ran down the boy's entire face, and he was shaking. A manic grin, complete with bloodshot eyes, made sure he painted a terrifying picture. Gaara of the desert had been looking for them ever since Suna got the message that the aquifer had been completed. He had scoured the desert for days. Ever since he had come back from Konoha, his emotions had let Mother Able to influence him more than usual. When he had heard about who exactly was less than 50 kilometers away from him, he sneaked out of his village, headed to Isago. Mother was so close to the surface he had to stop a few times to let her out, if only partially. Then he learned he had come a bit too late. The Konoha shinobi had left. Unfortunately, his rage at learning this led him to lose control of himself close to the village of Isago. A few people had likely been killed by the resulting sandstorm Mother had created when he let her out. But neither he nor she cared about this place. A few hours later, she had calmed enough that he was able to regain control. He was Gaara of the desert. He breathed, now in one of his colder, more murderous moods. Finding someone who had left just hours ago would be child's play, for him. The desert answered his call. He was seeking 3 specific people. The Hokage's son. The Sarutobi he hadn't had the chance to kill yet. And, the Uchiha boy who had tricked him, preventing him from having the fight he had craved. He would fix this. Right now. I think all the rules are off. Sasuke said. Naruto hesitated, considered pulling his sword out, but settled for his staff. Cruel monster or not, Gaara was still a boy their age. Both Uchiha activated their Sharingan. Naruto called forth lightning chakra, focusing it into his legs. Gaara laughed a high-pitched laugh. You 3. I haven't forgotten about you. Gaara's chakra became even more oppressive, thick, and heavy. A sandstorm started. Gaara roared and 2 things happened. The desert seemed to lift up. No. It was trying to climb up their legs. They jumped to avoid getting pulled down. The blades of wind Gaara had summoned slash at them, tearing through their arms and legs. Since when can he do that too? Naruto shouted, in pain, over the sounds of the raging storm. He's a Jinchuriki. Sasuke screamed back. All bets are off, when it comes to their abilities. So that's a Jinchuriki? What a bad time to figure that out. Toru! Naruto screamed. His teammate understood at once. He tried to meet Gaara's eyes. Gaara screamed, in delirious laughter. No more illusions this time. The sand covered his eyes, and 3 eyes made out of sand appeared, focusing on each of them. Damn it! Toru let out. There went their best bet. Gaara! He shouted. Toru continued. You're weakened. I can see your chakra levels. Compared to how you were in the exam, you're dead on your feet. It was true. Gaara was drenched in sweat, and half delirious. His chakra was still heavy, and he was still stronger than them, though. They were in the desert. No answer came. He tried again. If it's me you want, then let them leave. This time, he reacted. I will crush all 3 of you. Not 1. Not 2. Toru gave up. Sasuke met their eyes. He caught Naruto in an illusion. What the fuck is he doing? Then he realized. Sasuke was talking to him through the genjutsu. It was very short sentences, and he could not answer back, but he got the gist of it. Bind him we burn then. He dug some trusty ninja wire out, while Toru and Sasuke spat fireballs at Gaara. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 4 clones appeared next to him, one hand bound in wire, the other holding a staff. They disappeared in a burst of lightning. With their Sharingan, both Toru and Sasuke could stay out of their way. The clones passed Gaara, and Naruto focused chakra into the wires, making them stronger. Lightning passed through, and he channeled some into his hand to avoid getting electrocuted. Lightning was strong against earth, as Gaara figured too late. The wires cut right through his sand and before he knew it, Gaara was bound. Fire style, cranium carver. Fire style, dragon flame. The sky burned orange from the glow of the superheated flames that the 2 Uchiha rained down on Gaara. He screamed in pain as he was roasted alive, his sand incapacitated by the lightning still coursing through him. It had been a combination they had practiced before with Kakashi. It also had been overkill for most situations they had faced. Not today. Guess that makes us murderers, Naruto thought. Was this enough? Toru breathed hard. Fire style had always been a bit more taxing on him than most Uchiha. I can't see through the smoke, there's too much chakra in the air. I can't see him, either. Sasuke answered, scanning. There's no way anyone could survive dash. Sand tsunami, a muffled voice roared. This time, the desert actually lifted off. Naruto almost got swallowed, but Sasuke managed to pull him out with the help of his own wire. I can't believe it. Toru muttered. We might actually die here. Keep on running. Behind them, Gaara was shifting. His burned flesh rippled, and peeled off in a grotesque show. The sandstorm increased in intensity. Gaara transformed into a creature that seemed to be made of sand entirely. He became more than 2 meters tall, his arms long and heavy. He let out a burst of wind that shot through the sand avalanche, turning Sasuke's left arm to a mass of bloody flesh. Sasuke! Toru screamed. He tried genjutsu again, but none affected the monstrous Gaara. The only clone who had survived appeared behind Gaara, staff wreathed in lightning, a technique he always had trouble maintaining. It cut the sand mass in two horizontally. Gaara let out a gurgle. He then finally relinquished his hold on his chakra. The desert fed into its body, and the monster that Gaara had become, doubled its size. He's got even more. Then it doubled again. We can't wait. This is the one-tailed beast. We won't be able to fight it if he transforms fully. Its size doubled again. He was now almost 10 meters tall, and almost as wide. But what scared both Sasuke and Toru was that they could feel the chakra building up. By a rough estimate, Gaara, or the one-tail rather, was only at about a fifth of its size, and its full power. They had no chance. Feeling so hopeless brought back terrible memories of the mission where Kurane had died, and Sakura had lost both an eye and an arm. All three of them had sworn never to let something like that happen again. So how did it come to this? Are we really going to die here? In the desert? Toru asked, voice small. No way. Sasuke seemed resigned too, his eyes focused on the ever-growing monster. Why did I become a ninja? Naruto wondered. It had been because he had wanted to learn more about chakra. Because he had wanted to become stronger. Because he had wanted to protect the people he cared about. This included both Sasuke and Toru. He also had made promises to both Karen and Ino. His chakra raged within him. With it, something ancient awoke inside him. It had been the same feeling as when they had faced the Uzumaki. When trying to protect Sakura. He put a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. Naruto pulled. In a flash of lightning, a spectral blade near Sasuke's mangled hand. A second one followed, this one a little bit smaller. A daisho. A chain appeared, linking Naruto and Sasuke. Toru saw it all happen with his Sharingan. Naruto took hold of the longer sword. It became physical, a black katana. This time, Naruto felt conscious of what was happening. This one conducts chakra. He said aloud, somehow knowing what it was for. Lightning sparked along its length. Help me out here. Naruto looked at both of them, eyes looking purple in the night. Your chakra. We're going to kill Gaara. The words felt bitter on his tongue. This was the moment he always had known would come. Where he'd compromise the only principle he really had. Sasuke just nodded, and Toru followed. Fire chakra flowed along the blade, and at the same time, lightning sparked. The beast had become even larger. Naruto felt exhausted. Manifesting the blade, and channeling chakra into the sword had taken all he had. Sasuke. Yes. Take it. It's yours. Take him out, please. He just nodded. Sharingan spinning, he hurled himself toward the beast. He knew exactly where its weakest point was. Its head, where Gaara was cocooned in sand. Uchiha Sasuke flew, a point of red and blue light in the night sky. With a sound like a tearing, burning and sparking all together, he went right through Gaara, bisecting him horizontally. Gaara's body fell and the beast halted its formation. The sand crumbled. Did it work? Toru asked, feeling absolutely useless. I hope so, I don't have much more in me. Naruto's chakra recovered fast, for sure, but this was just too much at the same time. They went towards Sasuke, who they could see standing over the two pieces that had been Gaara. How the hell is he still alive? The redhead screamed, fearful. I won't die. Naruto approached him. I won't cease to exist. I refuse. Gaara continued to yell. Naruto stood next to Sasuke, who was looking at the downed boy, something like pity in his eyes. Is he dying? He asked Sasuke. He seemed hesitant. He's a Jinchuriki. I think if anyone might survive being cut in half, it might be him. Naruto moved towards him, Toru in tow. Don't come near me. If we let you go, Would you stop? Naruto asked, feeling emptier than ever. Will you ever stop killing? Gaara said nothing. Will you? Yes. Yes. I swear so. Gaara screamed, eyes manic. A hint of a crazed smile started to shine through. Naruto. Toru looked at him, eyes still cherry non-red. He's not telling the truth. He said simply. Thought so. Naruto stepped closer. Lightning coursed along his staff. No. Please dash. The staff smashed right through his face, splattering blood, bone, and brain matter around Gaara's downed form. Toru didn't look away. Nor did Sasuke. Naruto's hand shook. Why did he feel like crying? It was the only way. Sasuke said, looking just as empty as he did. The trouble had only started. Why did he come here if he was almost out of it? Sasuke wondered aloud. Naruto said nothing. He was lost in thought. Either he was relying on this transformation, or he was even crazier than we thought. Toru mumbled. Sasuke stayed silent, eyes frightened. Cousin. Guys, do you see this? He asked, pointing at Gaara's body. On his right shoulder, a seal was gleaming red. Naruto could approximate one reading of it. It was not the full seal, as it had been compacted, but his blood froze. Living host. Wind. Container. These were the main elements that composed it. He could take a guess at the rest, but he could see that they would have something more immediate to deal with. Guys. The seal. It only works as long as the host is alive. His voice cracked. It's breaking. Oh, please. No. Sasuke closed his eyes. What? What? Toru asked, eyes wild. The tailed beast of wind is about to break free. Chapter 20, Kaleidoscope. Panic made people react in strange ways. In this case, Toru froze completely. This night had simply been too much. Naruto tried to figure out if there was a way they could escape. He came up short. Gaara, even when less than half transformed, had the reach to prevent them from leaving. Sasuke thought. Fast. We need to seal it. He said, as if this were the simplest thing in the world. What do you mean? We have nothing that could contain it. This is a tailed beast, like the 9 tails that attacked Konoha. Naruto shot back. Then seal it within me. The hell are you talking about? Naruto asked. This is the dumbest thing I've heard. Sasuke smiled a mirthless grin. I don't think we really have a choice, actually. He looked at Gaara's seal. Besides, I can't do it myself, you're the seals guy. I can't seal a fucking tailed beast. Why not? God damn it. He was even considering it. Gaara's seal was unraveling already, and it would be easy enough to figure out how to copy it if he forced it open completely. You want to seal a tailed beast within yourself? Toru asked. Are you completely mad? I have the Sharingan. I think Itachi could teach me how to control the beast. Sasuke added. That's the only option. There's only desert for the next few hundred kilometers. The beast had control over sand. I don't think we're going to make it anywhere. Toru said nothing. Which was as good as agreement, when it came to him. Naruto palmed his face. He let out a long scream. Then he popped a soldier's pill. He spoke, so nervous he felt almost calm again. Let's seal a tailed beast, then. This seal is faulty. Naruto said. What do you mean? I think it was meant to let the host access the Biju's chakra, but it's shoddy. It lets the tailed beast through almost entirely. I think the only reason this holds is because the one tail is supposed to be the weakest of the 9. Oh. Sasuke thought. Can you fix it? No way, this is way beyond me. Is there anybody who could? Toru asked. The old man could, probably. If not, one of his former students is apparently a seal master. That's good enough for me. Sasuke nodded. Sasuke, it could be days before we reach the village. That is. If we manage. Any better idea? Sasuke snarked. No answer. That's what I thought, too. The seal, having been forced open by Naruto to copy it, was unraveling faster. Beige chakra was leaking from Gaara's broken body. Naruto and 3 of his clones sat around it, sealing matrix already drawn. Sweat was pouring down their faces. Sasuke stood in the middle of a hastily drawn sealing matrix. On his left shoulder, the same seal that had been drawn on Gaara's shoulder stood, burning red. The matrix on the ground would be compacted into it once the transfer was over. The chakra leaking from Gaara was transferred at a steady rate into the seal on Sasuke's shoulder. His only job was to open his tenketsu as wide as he could, to accommodate for the foreign nature of the creature that would soon be part of him, and pull the chakra inside him. Toru was overseeing the chakra transfer, not heeding the strain his eyes were under. They had started shortly before dawn had come. Now, the sun had set again. None of them could tell for sure for long they had been there. But if they lost their focus, if only for an instant, death would ensue. Guys! Guys! Toru lifted bleary eyes towards him. His Sharingan was still on, and he had consumed more soldier pills than what was normally allowed. Sasuke kept his eyes closed but answered him. Is it done? Yes. I think so. Gaara's seal is dull again, and there's no more chakra in the air. Sasuke opened his eyes. They were still black, but Naruto could see a hint of something golden, and very inhuman within them. It must have worked, then. Sasuke stared at Gaara, and turned his Sharingan on. There were 3 tomo spinning in each eye, now, and the red of it seemed brighter somehow, leaving a hazy red halo in the air. You're right. Gaara's seal is completely dead. There's nothing inside it. I think we did it. Toru fell on his back. Oh, God. Oh God. Naruto started to relax, as well. Maybe they could sleep. How long had they been up, again? Sasuke's instincts screamed. Somebody's here. A cold, low voice answered. My, what a warm welcome. 2 men had appeared out of nowhere. A red-haired man with hair in a ponytail. A man wearing an orange mask. Both wearing black robes with red clouds. This is the worst night of my life. Naruto thought. Uzumaki Ryujin was apparently back for them. And he had brought company. The orange mask seemed familiar, somehow, but he couldn't figure out why. His lone eye stopped on him. A Sharingan. He averted his eyes, but it was too late. He had already been caught. His body froze entirely. So, little Sarutobi is more than what meets the eye, then? The masked man asked, in dark amusement. The Uzumaki laughed. Apparently, yes. And it seems the 3 of them are moving up in the world. Killing a Jinchuriki. If an unstable one, at the age of 13. He whistled. And then sealing it immediately thereafter. It's a good thing we're not leaving you to your own devices, I guess. Who knows what you could have done with more time. Enough talking, Uzumaki. We're here for a single reason. The 4th's legacy. We'll come for the other one later, he shall be the last. He started moving toward Naruto. Toru stood up on shaky legs. He stood there defiantly, just like Kurane-sensei had done. Sasuke wanted to scream, but found himself so low on energy that he just managed to fall forward. What he wanted to say, he didn't know. Leave us. Protect us. Nothing would help here. The masked man moved so fast that Naruto thought he had dreamed it. His kunai cut through Toru's throat smoothly. He then disposed of it by letting it fall in the bloodied sand. Toru choked on his blood, eyes wide. He died like this. Naruto felt Sasuke's chakra spike, but the Uzumaki did something to him. Sasuke stayed on the floor, silent tears running down his face. Naruto was sure the same thing was happening to him. Then the redhead picked him up, carrying him on his shoulder as if he weighed nothing. He was still unable to move, or even see Sasuke. I'm kinda sorry for you, little Uchiha. Uzumaki said. This one is about to die, too. He said, pointing at Naruto, who felt his insides turn cold. The man with the Sharingan shrugged. Uzumaki continued. Maybe it would be a mercy to kill you too. No. The other man declared. And why not take him now, boss? The masked man laughed, it was a sinister sound. I just don't feel like killing any more family tonight. Let him live for now. We'll be back for him. The Uzumaki snorted, and disappeared with Naruto's body in the vortex. The Uchiha traitor stared at Sasuke. I will see you around, little Uchiha. He then disappeared. Sasuke would not forget this rogue Uchiha. Sasuke thought of Naruto. Captured. Soon to be dead, for reasons he didn't understand. He thought of Toru. Dead at 13. His own cousin, who had been his brother in all but blood. Both dead. By his fault. If he hadn't brought them here. If he had been stronger. If they had left earlier. The Biju inside him laughed. It was a shrill sound, full of the same madness Sasuke was feeling echoing within him. He felt like screaming. His emotions burned. The tailed beast mirrored him, roaring at the world. His eyes bled. He felt them change, get stronger, darker. Sasuke was ready to let the world burn. His chakra manifested his will, and even sand was set ablaze. Except somebody was calling him. He knew this voice. He called the flames back, wrestling for control. It took everything he had. He lifted his tired eyes, not believing what he was seeing. Toru, alive. And crying. He had survived? Where was the wound that had killed him? There was nothing there but a small nick along his throat. One of his eyes was entirely blank. Without even asking, Sasuke knew this one was blind. Toru said nothing. He just put both of his arms around him, holding onto him for dear life. Sasuke did, too. They cried. Of Naruto, there was nothing left but his bloody necklace. No. That was not it. He could not explain how, but Sasuke felt the blades that Naruto had summoned rest inside him. Sure enough, he could manifest them both, by using his chakra. This was all that was left of their teammate. He had died because they were not strong enough. 2 times had been enough. Sasuke had learned his lesson. He would have to become the strongest ninja of this era. Then he would not have to lose anyone else. Sasuke had given him the shortest sword, separating the Daisho in 2. How that worked exactly, neither of them knew for sure, but in exchange for a very slight chakra drain, Toru could keep the Wakaizashi manifested. If he stopped feeding it chakra, it went back to Sasuke. That was Naruto's. He had no chakra to spare right now, but he would change that soon. He would get strong enough to keep it close, as a memento. And strong enough to never again feel as useless as he did today. Once they swirled out of the vortex, Naruto was dumped unceremoniously on the floor. Tobi. Sujin. I see you've succeeded. A man said, his voice raspy and tired. Sujin. So the man who had carried him here was not the same as last time? His chakra felt just as powerful, befitting an S-rank ninja, but it did have a slightly different feeling to it. Yes. The man named Tobi replied. Bring him to me. I will extract the 9 tails right away. He felt himself get picked up again. Naruto couldn't speak. 9 tails? What the hell were they talking about? Naruto could see some of the people in the room. Besides the man carrying him, there were 2 other people with the same shade of red hair. One was definitely Ryujin. Now that he saw the face he hated so much, and saw him wink, he wondered how he could have mixed Kurene's killer, the one who had maimed Sakura, with the guy currently carrying him. They looked similar enough, but the differences were there. Brothers. Twins, maybe. And then there was the other redhead. This one was so emaciated he looked like a corpse. His chakra was terrifying, though. It dwarfed Gaara's, even Fu's in intensity. His purple, ringed eyes stared at him the whole time. Naruto was afraid. The man someone had called him Nagato completed a long series of hand signs. A statue rose up from the ground. It is time. Nagato said. Other people sat in a circle around Naruto's body. Sarutobi almost fooled us, but this is undeniably the boy. The 9 tails is ours, now. Naruto felt something pull from deep behind his navel. He felt indescribable pain, and lost consciousness soon enough. Naruto was floating in what seemed to be space. There was something that seemed to be light, but he knew it really wasn't. He felt as if he were falling. He felt as if were rising. He was in pain. He felt free. Then the incoherent jumble of feelings stopped abruptly. He woke up in the water. Where he was, he could not say. There was something calling to him. He was stuck in a maze. A maze of sewers. He walked along the path, entirely dazed. After what seemed like minutes, he reached a gate. There had been a seal on it, but it had been ripped. There seemed to be nothing inside the cage but darkness. He moved closer. Naruto. Naruto stopped moving. Somebody was here with him. A man with blonde hair. A white coat. He had seen this face before on the mountain. Lord. Fourth. Naruto asked, in wonder. The man nodded. I worked this failsafe into the seal in case the Nine Tails ever got close to freedom. It seems the time has come. What? And I was looking forward to seeing my son, even if now seems like a bad moment. What the hell are you talking about? Nagato nodded in satisfaction. By his estimations, they had extracted around 7 tails of the 9 tails chakra. It had taken close to 2 entire days, with all of them here, but they were close. They'd be done soon. The fourth seemed surprised. You are my son, Naruto. I'm the one who named you. That's impossible. He said vehemently. Why would that be impossible? Because I'm a Sarutobi. What? My father, Sarutobi Ran, died before I was born. My mother died giving birth to me. Well, the second part is true enough, I guess. But Sarutobi Ran? What are you talking about? Namikaze Minato knew of Ran, but he couldn't figure why his son was convinced the man whose biggest claim to fame was his high alcohol tolerance had anything to do with him. That's right, the clan told me about him. And they told me my mother was a whore. What does it even matter? Minato stood there, dumbfounded. A quiet chuckle reverberated from the back of the cage. One single opened, as big as a man. Teeth that could break through a house gleamed in the dark. This is probably the most amusing thing I have heard in years. Minato ignored him. Who told you all of this? Is Hiruzen still alive? Of course he is. He told me about it. Minato looked as if he had been punched in the face. The creature in the cage laughed, harder and harder. This is what tends to happen when you trust humans, little Hokage. Why had the third done this? Even in his mindscape, Naruto had brown hair and eyes. That was how he saw himself. Adopting his son, he would have understood. But hiding everything from him and having him grow up as the son of a prostitute and a drunkard? Was Hiruzen trying to make his son dependent on him? It was not unheard of for the village leader to make sure the Jinchuriki were loyal solely to them. The same thing had been done to people with strong abilities, if in a different way. Iwa, for one, after having participated in the sacking of Uzushio, had stolen some of the children, and had them grow up in specific homes, erasing all traces of their heritage. They would grow up loyal to their new clan, and their village. Brainwashing them, basically. He had never expected the same to happen to his son. Set me free, little Hokage. Your son will die soon enough, anyway. This way, I will avenge both of you. You have my promise. He ignored the Nine Tails. Minato felt terrible about what had happened with his son. He wished he had more time. He wished he could explain everything. But he did not have the time. Not if he wanted his son to live. Maybe if Kushina managed to speak to him, she could do it. Hear me out, Nine Tails. I will strike a bargain with you. Hear me out, Nine Tails. I will strike a bargain with you. So the creature behind the bars was definitely the Nine Tails, then. The creature quieted, his eyes bright with intelligence. This was nothing like the one tail had been. The fourth turned to face him. The third lied to you about many things. He also hid who you truly were. Why, I don't know for sure, I can only surmise. But I can assure you of one thing, he said, his blue eyes staring deep into his. Just as sure as I am Namikaze Minato, you were born as Namikaze Naruto. Though me and my wife, Uzumaki Kushina, considered having you take the Uzumaki surname. I don't think he's lying. It felt like his whole world was turned upside down. He was the son of the fourth Hokage, not a Sarutobi. He was an Uzumaki, not related to the third at all. He was a Jinchuriki, the jailer of the Nine Tails. He wondered who knew. He wondered who else had lied to him. And he wondered why. Naruto felt anger brewing inside him. He would find out the truth. The fourth continued. Somebody tightened the Nine Tails seal. It is burrowed deeper inside you. That's likely why you were never able to access its chakra, like you were supposed to. The people who captured you are almost done extracting the Nine Tails from you. What do I do? Minato smiled painfully. Let me help you. Saving you is the least I can do for my son. Speak your terms, fourth Hokage. I know you're fading out. What will happen to your consciousness once their plan comes through, I do not know. If you help us, then I will help you. The Nine Tails snorted. Bah. There's nothing you can do. You've been dead for years now. Lend us your remaining power. With it, I can free Naruto. He will get you out of here, as soon as he can. The Nine Tails paused. Then it started laughing. Insolent human. Were it not for this cage, I would devour you. Minato stood still, waiting. The beast stared at him for almost a minute. There is no guarantee the child will survive. No. Minato said, closing his eyes. Maybe he won't. So why should I even bother listening to you? Naruto stood with bated breath. The fourth answered. Because if you do nothing, you're guaranteed to stay trapped in this statue until these people are done with you. With this way, you at least have a chance. So, what will it be? Do you prefer being trapped with your Nine Tails for the rest of your existence? The Nine Tails closed its eyes. Or will you take a chance on us? 7 tails of your power is already more than you know what to do with. You would only sacrifice about a fifth of your power. For a chance at freedom. This is why I hate you humans so much. Do we have a bargain, Nine Tails? I have one condition. Tell us. I want my freedom. When your son frees me. And he will have no choice but to, as he needs my chakra to survive. I want him to let me go. No. That will kill him. Then I won't agree to your terms. Then you will die. So will he. They stared at each other, neither budging. Upon his death. Upon his death, he will set you free. You won't be trapped into any other human, you have my promise. The Nine Tails stared at him. On the condition that you never harm any other human. The beast grunted. No. There is a certain human I plan on devouring. And I won't stand still if humans ever come looking for me again. I know they will. Minato let out a sigh. This was likely true. Then leave them alone, as long as they leave you alone. Besides that masked man with the Sharingan, and that's him, I assume. His smile was hard. This one you can have. If my son doesn't get him first. The Nine Tails grunted in vague approval. Then I'll leave them mostly alone. I want nothing to do with your kind anyway. Minato nodded. And there is another matter at hand. You have sealed half my power away. I want it back. This is beyond me. It is sealed in the Shinigami's belly, and I am dead. Then have your son find a way. I can't promise you this. You're not the one I was asking. Minato sighed. This was a hard bargain. And who knew what breaking a contract with a Biju entailed? This was the best he would negotiate today. He looked toward his son. Naruto, do you agree? Tell us your answer, human. Naruto closed his eyes. I've managed my whole life without the Nine Tails power. I'll just have to figure out how to reach this Shinigami thing, then. He opened them. Yes. Nagato noticed the flow of chakra stopped, a bit earlier than expected. The Jinchuriki was dead then. The statue was seemingly full. Such a rich chakra that was, too. Conan helped him walk up to it. He felt Toby's eyes on him. He wasn't sure what was going through the man's mind, but whatever it was, he didn't try to stop him. Nagato summoned the Preta path. He reached with his hand to the statue and started taking in the Nine Tails' mighty chakra. A few instants later, and he looked like a man decades younger. More importantly, his legs, just like the rest of his body, had healed entirely. Power flowed through his body, more than he had felt in years. He was whole again. Check the description for the links to the author.